Chapter 2:16. He saw that at the end of the letter, there was a poem that he could not bear to see. It said, "Spring is like the sea, rising like mud, taking advantage of the harmonious weather, blooming the flowers. For love, soaking the silk, the handkerchief is not filled with lovesick tears." There were 2 lines of small words at the end. It was a private conversation that he could not bear to hear. Sangwon's face was as red as rouge. Even her neck was red from embarrassment. She unconsciously raised her hand to cover her face. When her slightly cold hand touched her face, she felt slightly better. Her gaze fell on the letter that she had thrown on the ground. Thinking of that indecent poem, and then thinking of how he had gritted his teeth and said, "I'll settle this with you when I come back," Sangwon's heart suddenly became embarrassed again. There was a sound of voices coming from outside the door. Xingji seemed to be calling out, "Miss Biao." Sangwon was startled. Why did Gu Fengzi come? Before she could return to her senses, Gu Fengzi had already called out to her with a smile. "Sister." Gu Fengzi lifted the curtain and entered. Her gaze fell on the letter on the floor, and she bent down to pick it up. "Don't move." Sangwon was scared out of her wits. She felt a chill run down her spine. With a shout, she rushed forward like a gust of wind and unceremoniously snatched the letter. Gu Fengzi, Lan Xiang, and Xingji who had followed in were all stunned. They stared at Sangwon as if they did not know her. Sangwon's actions had always been gentle and graceful. If they did not see it with their own eyes, they would never have imagined that she would have such a side to her. Sangwon did not have the time to think about their reactions. She only let out a big sigh of relief. Luckily, if this letter fell into Gu Fengzi's hands and she saw it, she would not be able to face anyone. "Sister, why are you here? Quickly take a seat. Xingji, pour some tea." In an instant, Sangwon had recovered from her shock. She sat down and said with a smile. Xingji bowed and left. Gu Fengzi stepped forward and stared at the letter in her hand. She smiled and said, "Elder sister, this is also a letter from eldest cousin, right? I don't know what's written in the letter. Let little sister take a look." Sangwon's heart skipped a beat. She subconsciously wanted to say no, but if it wasn't, then what was it? She had clearly lost her composure just now. If this letter was written by Shi Fengju, then it would be fine. But if it wasn't, then it must have been written by someone else. If this someone else's letter could make her lose her composure, then there must be a problem. It was not impossible for people to say that they were having an affair. Sangwon tucked the letter into her sleeve and said with a smile, "This is what De Xiaoye wrote for me. He only told me to serve Nyong well and take care of the mansion. Here, the envelope is still here." Sangwon said as she pointed at the coffee table beside her. Gu Fengzi followed her finger and looked at the brown envelope. The words, "To my wife," were particularly glaring. Gu Fengzi's heart ached, but she still smiled and said, "Good elder sister, why don't you let me take a look? Let me also listen to eldest cousin's teachings." Sangwon frowned and looked at her with a cold gaze. After a while, she lightly said, "This is not something you can see." Gu Fengzi suddenly became angry. Eldest cousin had warned her to remember her status, but who was Sangwon to dare speak to her like this? "Elder sister." Gu Fengzi gave a cold smile and said in confusion, "I'm curious. Since this letter was written by eldest cousin, why did elder sister throw it to the ground? Whenever aunt receives eldest cousin's letter, she would treat it like a treasure and hide it well. Does elder sister dislike eldest cousin so much? Or did eldest cousin tell elder sister something in the letter that made elder sister angry?" After saying this, she gave a cold smile. Could it be that it has something to do with younger sister and made elder sister unhappy? The more Gu Fengzi thought about it, the more she felt that it was true. It must be that eldest cousin had asked this woman to take care of her and she was jealous. Yes, it must be like this. "What nonsense are you saying?" Sangwon said. "Which eye of yours saw me throw the letter out? It just fell to the ground when I wasn't looking. I was about to pick it up when you barged in." "Xingji," Sangwon said as she turned her head to glare at Xingji. She frowned and said, How do you do things? Why didn't you inform us that Miss Biao was coming? No manners. This servant knows her mistake. Next time, this servant will be more careful. Xingji stepped forward with her hands down. Gu Fengzi was becoming more and more unrestrained in Ning Garden. She would often barge in without any explanation. They were only servants, so how could they stop her? Sangwon said coldly, "You should be more careful. Otherwise, if everyone is as lazy as you, then the rules of this fu will become decorations. Go back and tell Mama Li to deduct half a month's salary, do you hear me?" "Yes, young mistress." Xingji respectfully agreed. "Elder sister, what is the meaning of this?" Gu Fengzi was furious. She was punishing Xingji, but it was clearly a slap to her own face. Sangwon said with a smile, "These servants don't know the rules. They even dare to be lazy when it comes to reporting, let alone other matters. I've wanted to teach them a lesson for a long time. Younger sister, why are you asking me this?" Gu Fengzi stared at Sangwon in disbelief. Her heart was filled with astonishment. Never in her wildest dreams would she have thought that the previously polite and gentle Sangwon would have such a tough side to her. Shi Fengju wasn't here, so she didn't care about the people in this fu. With her clever methods, wouldn't she be able to do whatever she wanted? As for Sangwon, she didn't care about her at all. In her opinion, what could she do with her weak and gentle personality? "You've finally revealed your true face." Gu Fengzi sneered, "I've misjudged you and underestimated you. I don't know if eldest cousin will still think that you're gentle and virtuous when he sees you now. You really know how to act." Xingji and Lan Xiang's expressions changed. They both lowered their heads and didn't dare to speak. Sangwon didn't respond to her words and lightly said, "Do you have anything else to say? If not, then you can leave. I'm busy right now. This slut, she actually dares to chase me away." Gu Fengzi stared hatefully at her and gritted her teeth. "Let's wait and see. Sangwon, you stole my man. I, Gu Fengzi, will spend the rest of my life with you. I won't rest until I'm dead." After she finished speaking, she suddenly stood up and left. Lan Xiang only felt her legs go soft and she hurriedly followed after her. The room fell into silence. After a while, Xingji went forward and smiled apologetically. "Young mistress, don't take her crazy words to heart. The tea is cold, this servant will go get you another cup." Sangwon nodded and smiled. Gu Fengzi was such a person. What difference would it make if she didn't take those words to heart? That hateful Shi Fengju, why isn't he back yet? Now that he's back, he'll settle these matters. Ever since Gu Fengzi left that day, she never appeared in Ning Garden again. A few days passed, but she didn't find trouble with her. In front of Wang, she was full of smiles and called her big sister. Sangwon had goosebumps when she heard that. She couldn't believe that there was such a person in this world. On this day, third old mistress Shi suddenly came to visit. Sangwon welcomed her with a smile and the two of them chatted in a corner of the warm room. Sangwon helped third old mistress Shi by a manner that she liked, and third old mistress Shi treated her differently from before. In fact, Sangwon felt a little guilty. Other than helping third old mistress Shi, she also wanted to buy it for herself. In the end, she spent 3,000 silvers to buy 200 mu of good quality farmland and a 50 mu mountain manor in the southern suburbs. She secretly asked Lu Ye to take care of it. After chatting for a while, third old mistress Shi suddenly smiled and said, "Wan Yang, third aunt doesn't treat you as an outsider. I have something to say, but don't take it to heart. Third aunt, please speak your mind. Wan Yang isn't such a foolish person." Sangwon smiled. She was secretly wondering what third old mistress Shi meant by that. "Then I'll be direct." Third old mistress Shi smiled. "It's quite funny. A few days ago, I had a maidservant who ran to me to repeat what she said after hearing some nonsense from some unknown source. Anyway, those words weren't anything good. I didn't want to say it at first, but since I started it in front of you today, I'm afraid you'll be suspicious if I don't make it clear." Third old mistress Shi then casually told her about those words. It turned out that the servants in the household were gossiping, saying that the third old Mistress Sher's family was insensible. They had been officials for so many years, yet they did nothing to help the household. Instead, they put on airs when they returned and made a fuss about this and that. They even said that they were going to renovate Qing Hui Garden soon. Weren't they purposely causing trouble for young mistress and young master? Who knew when they would go out to take up their duties again? The maidservant wanted to see who it was, but she couldn't see clearly through the flowery fence. The two of them walked further and further away as they talked, so she ran back to Ji Chui Tower with a stomach full of anger and told third old Mistress Sher everything that happened. If it was before the new year, third old Mistress Sher would definitely be fuming with anger and resent Sang Wan after hearing those words. However, she was very grateful to Sang Wan and Shi Fengju, so why would she resent them? When she heard those words, she was unhappy for a moment, but she quickly calmed down. She questioned the servant and sneered. Third old Mistress Sher wasn't someone who hadn't seen the world, nor was she a foolish person. She watched coldly from the sidelines and saw Gu Fengzi jumping up and down to win people's hearts, especially to curry favor with Wang. Third old Mistress Sher concluded that this was definitely not a concubine who knew her place. From third old Mistress Sher's point of view, if a concubine didn't know her place, then she deserved to die. She thought about it for a moment and knew that there was something fishy going on. It most likely had something to do with Gu Fengzi, who was making a ruckus these days. She wanted to use her to cause trouble with Sang Wan. How dare she? As for how innocent and childhood sweethearts Gu Fengzi and Shi Fengju used to be, third old Mistress Sher didn't know. She only knew that Shi Fengju was very protective of Sang Wan, a wife who was married from a small family. Without looking at other things, just for Shi Fengju's sake, third old Mistress Sher would definitely not fall out with Sang Wan. Even if she and her husband were to go out and become officials in a year or two, they would still have to return to their roots. They would still need the household's financial support every year. Now that the household's businesses were all managed by Shi Fengju, she would have nothing better to do if she offended Shi Fengju. Not to mention, after interacting with Sang Wan, third old Mistress Sher actually quite liked this niece-in-law. After thinking about it, third old Mistress Sher made up her mind to tell Sang Wan about this matter so that she would remember her kindness and be on guard. Chapter 217. Sang Wan was shocked and angry after hearing that, and her face turned ugly. No wonder Gu Fengzi called Wang big sister, so affectionately, she had stabbed her in the back again. Sang Wan secretly mocked herself. Gu Fengzi was good at backstabbing people, but she was muddle-headed and did not take precautions even after suffering so many losses. Third aunt, thank you for telling me this. Sang Wan said gratefully, there are too many servants in the household, I wonder which one of them spouted nonsense. I've added to third aunt's anger for no reason. Fortunately, third aunt is a sensible person, or else I wouldn't be able to explain myself. Don't worry, you've always done things properly, and you're not one to talk behind people's backs. I don't believe these words. However, I can't guarantee whether others will believe it or not. Third old Mistress Sher smiled and left with this sentence. After sending third old Mistress Sher off, Sang Wan called for Mama Li and asked her to find out who passed by the flower fence at that time. Mama Li was annoyed after hearing Sang Wan's explanation. Young mistress, you're too kind, spoiling people until they become more unscrupulous. Not to mention this time, the matter of the shell pastries was obviously to sow discord between you and first old mistress. Now, even third old mistress is involved. She continued, fortunately, third old mistress is a sensible person. If second old mistress, Mama Li did not continue, but Sang Wan understood what she meant. She said coldly, Nanny, you must find out who these two gossipers are. Young mistress, don't worry. This isn't difficult, it's just a little troublesome. Mama Li said energetically, once we find out who these two are, we must skin them alive. Although there were many servants in the manor, they all had their own duties. Who was on duty, when and what they were doing, could be found out. After checking layer by layer, they quickly found 5 daughters-in-law. After questioning them in detail, the remaining 2 who cleaned the garden could not deny it. The 2 women from Lu Shun's family and Wu Chuanfeng's family were brought to Sang Wan in Ning Garden. Before they knew what was going on, Mama Lee bluntly asked, "Where were you two on the 23rd of March?" The two women were so shocked that they were stunned. The two of them couldn't remember the exact date of that day, but they still felt guilty about what they did at that time. Not only them, but Gu Fengzi, who had been invited by Sang Wan and was hiding behind the screen, also had a slight change in expression. "You don't remember?" Mama Lee sneered and said, "Let me remind you, have you ever been to the East Gardens flower fence?" The two of them looked at each other, dumbstruck. "Yes, we have been there," Lu Shun's wife said with a smile. "We were on duty that day and went to clean the fallen leaves." Why is Mama Lee suddenly asking about this? Could it be that we did something wrong? Right, Wu Chuanfeng's wife nodded. "We were there to clean." Mama Lee said coldly, "You only cleaned and didn't say anything? Third foreign and eldest young mistress are also people you can talk about?" When Li Shun's wife and Wu Chuanfeng's wife heard this, they immediately cried out that they had been wronged, insisting that they did not admit it. "Everyone shut up," Mama Lee said coldly. "Don't be in a hurry to cry out that you have been wronged, let me finish." As she said this, she began to explain everything in detail. How many people were on duty that day in the garden, what everyone was doing at that time, she said them one by one, and they all matched up. In the end, only the two of them were left, and they just happened to be in that area of the flower fence. "What else do you have to say? Could it be that there were other people in this fu when there were other people?" Wu Chuanfeng's face paled, and she hurriedly tried to explain, "This servant remembers now, we were cleaning at Hibiscus Pavilion at that time, not at the flower fence. We were there in the morning." "Full of nonsense." Mama Lee snorted, "If I didn't have evidence, why would I bring the two of you here? In the morning, you were clearly at Plum Garden. Then you went to the wisteria and stayed there until lunch. After lunch, you spent some time with the sisters-in-law in the kitchen. After that, you went along the northeast corner of the garden to clean the flower fence. Am I right? I have witnesses here. If you don't behave, then go to the yard and kneel there to reflect. When you think it through, then we'll talk again." Li Shun's wife and Wu Chuanfeng's wife trembled in fear when they heard this. Even Gu Fengzi felt slightly uneasy. She did not think that Sang Wan would investigate this matter so thoroughly. When Li Shun and Wu Chunfeng did that thing that day, they did not expect this day to come. They only prevented third old Mistress She's maidservants from seeing their faces and did not hide it from the people in the garden. The people in the garden had a fixed number of people. If Mama Lee were to investigate seriously, how could she not catch them? The two of them looked at each other, then turned to Sang Wan and kowtowed. "Ma'am, please be merciful and forgive the old slave. The old slave is innocent. The old slave would not have the guts to talk behind his master's back. Ma'am, please look into this matter and forgive the old slave." The two of them kowtowed loudly and begged. Sang Wan had always been gentle and soft-hearted. As long as they begged her to forgive this matter, Mama Lee was a servant after all. How could she not let it go? However, they did not know that this matter was originally ordered by Sang Wan to do by Mama Lee. "It seems that I have been too merciful," Sang Wan said coldly. "That's why the two of you are so bold that you can't wait to ride on top of my head. In front of old mistress, you dare to cry and make a fuss?" Sang Wan's voice suddenly turned stern. The faces of the two men from Li Shun's family stiffened. Tears flowed down their faces and they could no longer kowtow. "Do you think I'm a fool?" Sang Wan said coldly. "You know clearly whether Mama Lee is innocent or not. If you don't admit it, don't blame me for being impolite. Who gave you the guts to talk behind your master's back and sow discord? I asked you and you didn't say anything. Do you want me to hand them over to the Jean housekeeper before you say anything?" "Mama Lee," Sang Wan raised her head and said, "since they won't say anything, send them to the outer courtyard and hand them over to the Jean housekeeper. Tell the Jean housekeeper what happened and let him interrogate them clearly. As for these two families, I think that if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. Since they are unrepentant, they are not worthy of being pitied. When the time comes, deal with them together." Li Shun's and Wu Chuanfeng's faces changed. Previously, they only dared to be impudent because Sang-won was soft-hearted. Since Sang-won was serious, how could they dare to be tough? Mama Lee even knew their whereabouts for the day. It was obvious that they could not deny it. The two of them hurriedly kowtowed and begged for mercy. They kept slapping their mouths and said that they were muddle-headed and begged young mistress to be merciful. Sang-won pursed her lips and sat coldly without saying a word. Nanny Lee understood and sneered, "I don't think all of you are usually talkative. Who is the one who instigated all of you? Hurry up and tell me the truth." Gu Fengzi's eyes suddenly shrank and her hands clenched. Li Shun's family was simple-minded. Just as she was about to open her mouth and shout, Wu Chuanfeng's family had already rushed to kowtow. No one ordered us servants to do that. It was us servants who were muddle-headed for a moment and spoke nonsense. We beg young mistress to be merciful. We won't dare to do it again. Li Shun's wife also came back to her senses and hurriedly kowtowed. Yes, it was us servants who were muddle-headed. After receiving benefits from Miss Gu, how could they dare to betray her? Miss Gu's temper was not easy to provoke. Mama Lee asked again and again, but the two of them stubbornly refused to say anything. Sang-won said, "You really are muddle-headed. You deserve to die. Younger sister, come out." Sang-won saw the two of them like this and knew that she would not be able to get anything out of them. Moreover, even if she asked, as long as Gu Fengzi denied it, she could not do anything to her. If she forced her too much and she cried, it would make her seem narrow-minded. What she wanted to do today was to make a show of force. No one should treat her as a fool. When Gu Fengzi came out from behind the screen, Li Shun's and Wu Chuanfeng's faces turned pale the moment they saw her. Their backs were drenched in cold sweat as they secretly thanked their lucky stars. If they had called out Miss Gu just now, they would have been in deep trouble. Gu Fengzi's heart was angry, shocked, and hateful. She said unhappily, "Older sister asked people to invite me here just to let me see this strange play? Older sister, what do you mean by this? What, does younger sister think that this is a play?" Sang-won said seriously, "These wicked servants don't know how to keep their mouths shut. Their minds are dirty and despicable. They only care about causing trouble behind our backs. If we don't punish them severely, who knows what they will do in the future? If there is a day when the family turns against each other and the harmony between family members is damaged, then it will be a big matter." "How can it be a play?" Gu Fengzi snorted. "Older sister is in charge of the family. How these servants are punished when they do something wrong, why do you have to drag me here to listen? Could it be that older sister thinks that this matter has something to do with me? I can't hide my thoughts. Older sister doesn't need to hide it. If you have doubts about me, just ask me. There are some things that everyone knows, so how can you say that I have doubts? Younger sister, don't think too much." Sang-won smiled mockingly. "The reason why I invited younger sister here is to hear younger sister's opinion. Younger sister, how do you think this matter should be handled?" "How would I know? It's just older sister's opinion." Gu Fengzi retorted coldly. Sang-won said, "How can it be based on my opinion? Although there are rules in the family, I feel that they are too light. Instigating discord between the masters, no matter which family it is a big taboo. That's why I wanted to ask younger sister's opinion. Younger sister used to be in charge of the family, so I'm sure you have some good ideas." Gu Fengzi said coldly, "Older sister thinks too highly of me. When I was in charge of the family, nothing like this had ever happened before. That's why I don't know." "Miss Gu's words are wrong." Mama Lee quickly interrupted and said, "Old slave remembers that when young mistress first entered the family, there was a servant girl who said some things that shouldn't be said behind her back. She instigated the relationship between young mistress and Miss Gu. Didn't Miss Gu cry in front of old mistress after that? How can it be that this has never happened before? Miss Gu's memory is not as good as this old woman's." Gu Fengzi was suddenly speechless. She couldn't help but blush. Chapter 218. Since Mammy Lee is so clear about it, why do you still ask me? Is older sister purposely trying to embarrass me? Gu Fengzi continued to speak coldly, her expression incomparably arrogant. Sangwon couldn't help but be secretly angry. She thought to herself that at this point, not only did she not know how to restrain herself, she even made false accusations. She didn't answer this question and said, "Now that Mama mentioned it, I also remembered. I remember that time those two servants knelt in the courtyard for a while. Afterwards, they were given a beating and sent to the farmstead to do manual labor. With the example from last time, there are still people who dare to do it this time. It can be seen that Mother was merciful last time. Let me be the evil person. Mama Lee, give those two servants 30 beatings each and deduct 3 months of their wages. Send their families to the farmstead. There's no need to wait until tomorrow, do it right now. Tell everyone in the manor about this matter and tell everyone not to do it again in the future. Otherwise, I'm afraid the consequences will be even worse." "Yes, young mistress." Mama Li glanced at Gu Fengzi and bowed in response. Li Shun's two servants' faces turned white. They never thought that Sangwon would have such a bad temper. They instantly fell to the ground, unable to even plead for leniency. Gu Fengzi's face was terrifyingly gloomy. Li Shun's two servants unconsciously looked towards her with pleading eyes, but she could only coldly look at them, unable to say a single word to plead for leniency. She finally understood why Sangwon had called her over to listen. First, it was to warn her. Second, it was to let her watch as Li Shun's two servants were punished without being able to plead for leniency on their behalf. In the future, which servant would be willing to risk everything to help her? The two men from Li Shun's family were quickly taken away. Sangwon glanced at Gu Fengzi and smiled faintly. "This matter isn't a big one, but it isn't a small one either. Since it involves our first and third household, I think it's better to inform Mother about it. Little sister, come with me and be a witness." Gu Fengzi watched as Li Shun's two family members were taken away right under her nose. She was already very unhappy. When she heard that Sangwon wanted her to go to Wang's place to talk about this matter, she immediately felt stifled. How could she be willing to go? She snorted coldly and said, "Since it's such a serious matter, elder sister should go by herself. I'm a little tired, so I won't accompany you any longer. Goodbye." "Stop!" Sangwon coldly shouted, staring at her and said, "I didn't discuss with you." "Then are you ordering me?" Gu Fengzi clenched her fists tightly. Her chest was about to explode from anger. She had never seen Sangwon like this. "If you understand it that way, then it's fine." Sangwon met her gaze. "Could it be that I can't order you?" Gu Fengzi was suddenly at a loss for words. The maidservants in the house were all looking down with their hands hanging by their sides, but Gu Fengzi knew that no one was not paying attention to the battle between the two of them. Sangwon ordered her, so she really had the qualifications to order her. "Let's go." Sangwon smiled and stood up. She walked forward and ordered Xing Ji, "Help Miss Gu." Xing Ji came forward with 2 servant girls. Gu Fengzi's face turned red and white. She glared at Sangwon and suddenly shook off Xing Ji and ran forward. She stared at Sangwon and said, "Sangwon, don't go too far. One day, I'll get my money back with interest." Sangwon stared back at her. "You were the one who started it first. Gu Fengzi, you'd better behave yourself. There's a limit to my patience." Gu Fengzi stared at her swaying back and her eyes were about to spit fire. She suddenly felt a little lost and dazed, as if she had never known this person in front of her. She dared to be so brazen because she knew that Shi Fengzi would not dare to be calculative with her because she had a good temper, a good face, and pretended to be magnanimous. Once Shi Fengzi became calculative, Gu Fengzi suddenly did not know what to do. When the two of them arrived at Wang's place, Sangwon briefly explained the matter to Wang. Naturally, she did not say that third old Mistress Shi was the one who told her and only said that the maids in Ning Garden accidentally overheard it. Hearing this, Wang Shi didn't feel angry and said, "These old women are the most hateful." Fortunately, the people in Ning Garden heard these words and went to tell you. If your third aunt knew, I'm afraid there would be another storm and the house would be in chaos. Those 2 servants should be punished severely, but don't you think it's a little too much to chase out their family members? Aunt is right. Gu Fengzi immediately smiled and said, Our family has always been benevolent. Those 2 servants were just muddle-headed and said a few more words. Moreover, there weren't any serious consequences. Sister should have taught them a lesson and punished them with 2 months of their salary to let them learn their lesson. Everyone is not a saint. How can there be no mistakes? Sister, why do you have to punish them so harshly and chase out their entire family? If others knew about it, they would say that the masters are mean. Gu Fengzi had no choice but to speak up in front of Sang Wan. Now that Wang had spoken up, she naturally had to take the opportunity to fight for it. Wang Shi nodded her head in agreement after hearing this. Sang Wan then said seriously, Mother, you can't do that. It's lucky that there weren't any serious consequences this time. If we really cause chaos in the household, not only will our own family members feel uncomfortable, won't we become a laughingstock? This daughter-in-law dares to remind you that when this daughter-in-law had just married in, sister punished 2 servants. However, those 2 servants were gossiping about sister and daughter-in-law behind their backs, clearly trying to sow discord. With that precedent, those 2 servants still dared to act so recklessly. It's clear that they are not alert enough. How can we let them off so easily this time? If we let them off lightly, I'm afraid that things will get worse in the future. Wang also thought of that matter and her face darkened. Wan Yang, you're right. Those servants with loose mouths are especially hateful. What's worse is that they don't learn from their mistakes. It's good to punish them severely, so that there won't be a next time. Gu Fengzi rushed to speak to Sang Wan. Older sister, what are you saying? Are you blaming Aunt for being too lenient? Shut up. Sang Wan's eyes turned cold as she shouted at her. Her long, shapely eyebrows raised as she coldly said, Does younger sister also want to learn from those servants who don't learn from their mistakes and try to sow discord? Mother was benevolent and originally had good intentions. Who knew that the servants didn't appreciate her kindness? I had no choice but to be the villain. In the future, I can avoid a lot of trouble. Why does younger sister's words have a different meaning? Younger sister, are you trying to sow discord between mother and me? Everyone in the room, including Wang, was stunned. They stared blankly at Sang Wan as if they didn't recognize her. This was the first time that this young mistress had lost her temper in public. Furthermore, she was scolding her mother-in-law's most beloved niece in front of her. In an instant, Gu Fengzi felt countless gazes directed at her. Her face turned red and she was so ashamed that she wished she could find a hole to hide in. In her heart, she killed Sang Wan 180 times. Biting her lips, she looked at Wang with grievance. Wang was also frightened. For no reason, she felt timid and fearful. She couldn't help but smile at Sang Wan. Wan Yang, don't think too much. Feng, definitely didn't mean it that way. You've always been filial to mother. How could mother not know? This matter will be handled according to what you said. With the matters of the Fu in your hands, I can rest assured. Thank you, mother, for understanding this daughter-in-law. Sang Wan immediately knelt down and said with tears in her eyes, Just now, this daughter-in-law lost my composure. I shouldn't have scolded younger sister in front of mother. It's just that younger sister's words were too ambiguous. If I wasn't careful, it would make people think in a bad way. This daughter-in-law was anxious and couldn't help but be angry. If these words were misheard and spread out, how would this daughter-in-law have a foothold? Even if it was mother, her benevolent heart would have been ruined by others. This daughter-in-law has been taught by father and mother since childhood. Father and mother aside, elder brother and sister-in-law often teach me to be filial to the elders and be harmonious with my sisters-in-law. This daughter-in-law sincerely respects and is filial to mother. If this daughter-in-law is unfilial, not only will this daughter-in-law feel uneasy, even eldest young master will not easily forgive this daughter-in-law. Mother, please understand this daughter-in-law's feelings. When Sang Wan knelt down, Gu Fengzi had no choice but to kneel down as well. She lowered her head and knelt behind Sang Wan. Her heart was filled with hatred. When she heard what was said, she hurriedly apologized and admitted her mistake. She said that she didn't mean what she said and that she was clumsy and didn't know how to speak properly. When Wang saw this, she hurriedly ordered Mama Jiang and the others to help the two of them up. She sighed and said, "It was just a slip of the tongue. Let's not take it to heart. Ah, Wan Nyang, Mother naturally knows your character. How could I suspect you of being unfilial? Don't think like that. Fong, you're not young anymore. In the future, you have to be more careful with your words. If you speak like this again, I won't forgive you." Sang Wan and Gu Fengzi hurriedly agreed. The two of them inadvertently looked at each other and immediately looked away. They understood each other's meaning in their hearts. After chatting for a while, Sang Wan said her goodbyes and left. Luya supported Sang Wan and her heart was filled with joy. After they left the main courtyard, the smile on her face didn't disappear. She quietly laughed and said, "Young mistress, you're really amazing." Hee, did you see that? Miss Gu's face turned purple like a pig's liver. Let's see if she still dares to be so arrogant in the future. She thinks that our young mistress is a pushover. Sang Wan tilted her head and glanced at Luya. She smiled and said, "All right, don't talk too much. If others hear it carefully and see your face full of smiles, they will think that I'm purposely teaching her a lesson." Sang Wan felt extremely tired and frustrated. This kind of life was really not what she wanted, but she had to face it and deal with it. Not only could she not be passive, she also had to take the initiative. She didn't expect that Gu Fengzi would be so daring when Shi Fengju wasn't around. She dared to sow discord in front of her. If her attitude had been soft and hesitant just now, she would have been overbearingly caught by her. Who knows what kind of thoughts that soft-hearted mother-in-law would have? She had no choice but to reprimand her in front of her. Fortunately, she made the right bet this time. Her mother-in-law stood on her side. Now that she had officially fallen out with Gu Fengzi, she didn't know what would happen tomorrow or the day after. However, Gu Fengzi wouldn't stop so easily. The game had already started. Even if she didn't want to play, she could only play along. That afternoon, an old servant hurriedly came to Ning Garden to seek an audience. It just so happened that old Mistress Zhuang was hosting a flower appreciation banquet today. Wang ordered Sang Wan to accompany her. When Luya heard that they were going to the Zhuang family, she subconsciously thought of the Zhuang family's son. She found an excuse and refused to go, wanting to stay behind to guard the garden. Sang Wan then brought along Xing Ji. Chapter 219. The weather was just right. Luya had moved a stool and was sitting under the shade of the flowers in the garden, chatting idly. When she heard that someone wanted to see her, she called for them to come in, but her hands did not stop working. "Young mistress went out with old mistress today. Will Mama come back later, or do you want me to pass on the message?" Luya raised her head and glanced at the servant. She recognized that it was Servant Zhang from the second gate and was slightly surprised. Servant Zhang quickly smiled and said, "This matter can't wait. Only when young mistress returns can you make a decision." "Young mistress, the people in the outer courtyard said that a woman came with a young girl. They said that they are young mistress relatives. When asked who they are, they stammered and refused to say. They only said that young mistress will know when she sees them." You see, now that Sang Wan was firmly in the position of mistress of the household, no one dared to neglect her matters. If it was in the past, the gatekeeper would have already chased them away. Why would they report this matter to the higher-ups? Young mistress relatives? Luya was also stunned. If they were the Shi family's relatives, it would be more likely. The Sang family's relatives rarely came around. Moreover, who would come all the way to Qingzhou? However, since that mother and daughter pair said that young mistress would know when she sees them, they were probably not lying. "Young mistress, why don't you go take a look? Or did the old slave bring them in?" Servant Zhang quickly said with a smile. "I'll go take a look," Luya said as she put down the sewing basket in her hands. She stood up and brushed her sleeves. After saying a few words, she left with Servant Zhang. When they exited the second gate and arrived at the outer courtyard's gatehouse, they saw a woman wearing a maroon embroidered robe and an ivory skirt. She was waiting there with a young girl wearing an autumn fragrance dress. The woman's eyes looked around mischievously, full of curiosity. The young girl, on the other hand, was quite uneasy. She lowered her head and unconsciously played with her fingers. "Young Mistress Luya, you're here." When the gatekeeper saw Luya, he quickly went forward with a smile and pointed at the mother and daughter. He did not even have the time to speak politely. The woman rushed over like a gust of wind, grabbed Luya's hand, and shouted with a smile, "Luya, you're finally here. We've been waiting for half a day." The gatekeeper and old Madame Zhang were both stunned. She was not bluffing. So, she was really young mistress's relative. However, young mistress was such a refined person. How could she have such an unpresentable relative? Not to mention the two of them muttering in their hearts, Luya was extremely embarrassed. It took her a lot of effort to withdraw her hand. She smiled vaguely and said, "Why are you here? Since you're here, come in with me." Luya sighed in her heart. She didn't expect Li to bring Sang Yen to her door. She didn't know what they wanted to do. Li proudly glanced at the gatekeeper and old Madame Zhang, who were stunned. She raised her chin and said, "Why is it only you? Where's Wan Nyong? Why don't I see her?" When the gatekeeper and old Madame Zhang heard her calling out their young mistress's name, they couldn't help but lower their heads. This unruly woman was not only young mistress's relative, but she also seemed to be quite close to her. Young mistress accompanied old Madame out as a guest today. "Quickly come in with me. Sit down, have some tea, and eat something. We'll talk about it when young mistress comes back." Luya smiled as she walked forward. At this moment, she really wanted to stuff Li's mouth. Young mistress and Miss Gu were in the middle of a heated argument when second old Madame Zhang suddenly rushed over. Wasn't she disrupting young mistress's plans? I say, Luya, walk slower. Do you want to tire me to death?" Li was very dissatisfied. She panted as she rushed forward to grab Luya. After noticing the surprise in the gatekeeper and old Madame Zhang's eyes, Li felt that she was noble. She was the second aunt of the Shi family's young mistress. Thus, she did not care much about Luya. Seeing that they had already entered the second gate, Luya slowed down and smiled. "Our young mistress's place is still a little far from here. Second old Madame Zhang, let's hurry up and go back earlier so that you can rest." "Is it still very far?" "Teske, the Shi family is really extravagant. The land that their family occupies is already as big as our entire village." Li could not help but look around. What she saw were tall and bright houses. Pavilions could be seen amidst the lush flowers and trees. Everywhere, there was a rich and beautiful atmosphere. She looked greedily and could not stop praising. After a while, she shouted, I say, Luya, my legs are about to break from walking so far. Why aren't there any palanquins? There should be palanquins in this big family, right? Go and call 2 palanquins over." "Mother." Sang Yen felt very embarrassed and could not help but gently tug at Li's sleeve. Li did not notice and continued to shout for Luya to call for palanquins. One must know that Li could not bear to pay for the carriage fees, so the coachman dropped them off when they entered Qingzhou. Li originally thought that since the Shi family was in Qingzhou, she would definitely be able to find out if she asked around. Why waste the money? Who knew that even though she asked around, Qingzhou was huge. From the city gate to the Shi family's residence, the mother and daughter's legs were about to break. Originally, they were still holding on with one breath, but now that they had reached their destination, how could they hold on? Luya did not know whether to laugh or cry. Call for palanquins? Second old Madame Zhang really dared to say that. Usually, in the household, even the young mistress could not call for palanquins. Only the first madam had this privilege. She was not polite at all. The moment she opened her mouth, she was arrogant and bossy. Luya could not help but frown slightly and felt displeased. Li relied on her status as the master, and did not put Luya in her eyes. When she saw Lu Ya's expression, she was annoyed. Seeing that there was a rock at the side, she simply sat down and rubbed her arms and legs while shouting, "I'm not walking anymore. I'm really tired to death." Lu Ya, quickly call for the palanquins. Mother, what are you doing? Ever since Sang Yen entered the Shi family, she felt restrained and uncomfortable everywhere. Seeing her mother's rude behavior, she was so ashamed that her face flushed red. Stand to the side. You have no right to speak. Li saw that she was not on the same page as her and glared at her angrily. Lu Ya was so anxious that sparks flew everywhere. She smiled bitterly and said, "Second old mistress, quickly get up. This isn't a place to sit. Only the servants would casually sit around like this. It's not that I don't want to call for the palanquins, but there are rules in the fu. Normally, aside from the eldest old mistress, even the eldest young mistress can't easily call for the palanquins. If you're tired, we'll walk slower. This isn't a place to talk." There are such rules? Li didn't believe her. Why would I lie to you? If you don't believe me, you can ask the eldest young mistress when she comes back. Lu Ya hurriedly said. Mother, it's better if you quickly get up. It shouldn't be too far away. Sang Yen also hurriedly pulled Li. Fine. Li finally got up. She patted her butt and muttered, "You lass, don't forget your roots after entering the city." Humph, I'll ask Wan Nyong later. If you lie to me, I'll settle accounts with you. Yes, how would I dare lie to you? Lu Ya let out a sigh of relief and hurriedly led the way with a smile. She only hoped that they wouldn't meet anyone on the way so that she could quickly lead them back to Ning Garden. Unexpectedly, what she feared came true. Not long after, she saw Gu Fengzi and Lan Xiang walking towards her. Lu Ya's expression changed as if she had been struck by lightning. She could only bow and greet, "Young Miss Biao." Gu Fengzi was just strolling around the garden because she had nothing to do. Who knew that she would bump into Lu Ya? Originally, she didn't pay much attention to it and passed by after greeting her. Unexpectedly, she discovered that the middle-aged woman behind Lu Ya was looking at her with a pair of shining eyes. Her eyes flickered with a greed and amazement that she was familiar with. Gu Fengzi was born with a bit of beauty. Coupled with the fact that she had been pampered in the Shi family since she was a child, her appearance was no different from that of a true daughter of a wealthy family. At this moment, she was wearing a light yellow robe with flowers and leaves. Inside, she was wearing a silver-blue silk robe with a vertical collar. Below, she wore a pink and white satin skirt with fish scales. At the edge of the skirt, there was a 2-inch lace border with gold and silver threads. At her waist, there was a sachet with a wand belt. When she moved, she revealed the tips of her shoes embroidered with pink begonias. Her exquisite hairbun was adorned with dazzling pearls and jade, making her look extremely exquisite and precious. Li loved to look at these things the most. When she saw them, she couldn't help but look at them. Gu Fengzi noticed and smiled at her. Lan Xiang, on the other hand, couldn't take it anymore. She saw that Li and Sang Yan's clothes weren't outstanding and that they didn't even have any decent jewelry in their hairbun. One of them was vulgar and the other was timid. Lan Xiang assumed that they were servants that Sang Wan had picked from the farmstead to serve her. Her expression immediately darkened and she reprimanded, "Impudent! Is Miss Biao someone you can fancy? Quickly apologize to Miss Biao." Only then did Lu Ya realize what was going on. She was secretly annoyed at Li's shallow eyelids. Just as she was about to say something, Li put her hands on her hips and raised her chin. She fiercely said to Lan Xiang, "You're the impudent one. Little girl, you've got guts. Do you know who I am? I'm your eldest young mistress's second aunt." Lu Ya felt a wave of dizziness and she secretly glared at Li. Earlier, in front of the gatekeeper and old Madame Zhang, she didn't want them to know about her relationship with Sang Wan. She didn't want them to know about her relationship with Sang Wan. Who knew that she would meet Gu Fengzi and her servant? What? Lan Xiang's eyes widened in shock. She didn't ask this question on purpose, but she was really frightened. Gu Fengzi was also stunned for a moment before bursting into laughter. She quickly covered her mouth with her handkerchief to hold back her laughter. What? Li was annoyed by Lan Xiang's reaction. She glared at her and snorted, "If you don't believe me, you can ask Luya. Why would this old lady lie to you?" Was there even a need to ask? Luya's face that looked like she wanted to cry but couldn't laugh or cry was enough to explain everything. "So it's second madam-in-law." Gu Fengzi smiled and stepped forward. She curtsied to Li and said with a smile, "This girl is shallow and doesn't know any better. Second madam-in-law, please don't lower yourself to her level. It's a disgrace to your status." Li saw that Gu Fengzi, a flower-like person, was curtsying to her and speaking so intimately and politely to her. She immediately had a good impression of her and said with a smile, "You're Miss Gu? Hee, Miss Gu is really polite. You're also as beautiful as a fairy. You really make people like you at first sight. It's common for girls to not know any better. Why would I bother with her?" Chapter 220. After a few words, Gu Fengzi had a basic understanding of what kind of person Li was. She was secretly amused. How could she let go of such an opportunity? She quickly smiled and said, "Second old mistress-in-law, you're too kind." "What Miss Cousin? Miss Cousin sounds so distant." "My name is Gu Fengzi. If you don't mind, you can call me Fengzi. You're a magnanimous person and won't be calculative with this servant." As she spoke, she continued to praise her. "Kiki, good, then I won't be polite. Fengzi, Kiki. That's good, that's more like a relative. You don't have to call me second old mistress-in-law, just call me aunt." Seeing Gu Fengzi praise her, Li was so happy that her entire body itched. All the pores on her body opened up and she felt so light that she almost flew into the sky. Gu Fengzi pursed her lips and smiled. "Aunt, you're still treating me like an outsider. I'll just call you second aunt, then. That's good. Li was so happy that she couldn't find north. What was there to be unwilling about? She only felt that this Miss Cousin was truly a good person. Seeing her looking at Sang Yen, she quickly pulled her forward and smiled. "This is my daughter, Sang Yen, and also your young mistress's cousin. Ah Yen, hurry and greet your cousin." Sang Yen was already panicking and was at a loss of what to do. In front of the dazzling and carefree Gu Fengzi, she felt so ashamed that she didn't know where to put her hands and feet. When she was pulled forward by her mother, she became even more flustered. After a while, she called out softly, "Cousin." Li was extremely dissatisfied with Sang Yan's performance. She felt that Sang Yen was too timid and embarrassed herself. She frowned and pinched Sang Yan's wrist. Sang Yen clenched her teeth in pain and her eyes turned red. "Younger sister, you don't have to be so polite." Gu Fengzi chuckled as she held Sang Yan's hand. Sizing her up, she smiled and said, "Little sister, you don't have to be nervous. I get along very well with elder sister. Her little sister is also my little sister. Hee, with one look, I can tell that younger sister is an obedient and lovable girl. This is our first meeting, and I haven't prepared anything good for younger sister. I hope that younger sister can accept this hibiscus golden hairpin as a token of my appreciation." After saying that, he pulled out the golden hairpin, which was made of gold, ruby as its petals, and rice beads as its stamen, from her hair bun, and thoughtfully put it on for Sang Yen. Sang Yen wanted to refuse, but how could she say anything? She stiffened and allowed Gu Fengzi to manipulate her. Li saw that the gold hairpin was dazzling, and the gemstone was flawless and bright. She estimated that the gold was at least 1 tael, and wondered how much it was worth. Since it was pulled out from Miss Gu's head, it definitely wouldn't be cheap. Her face was full of smiles as she repeatedly said, I don't dare. She then stretched out her finger and poked Sang Yan's head as she lectured, "This girl is really stupid. Why aren't you thanking older cousin?" Sang Yen was even more embarrassed. She couldn't wait to turn around and leave. She lowered her head and timidly said, "Thank you, older cousin." Second aunt and younger sister, you don't have to be so polite. Gu Fengzi smiled and said, it's rare for second aunt to come. It's a pity that elder sister went out with aunt as a guest today. I don't know when she'll be back. If second aunt doesn't mind, why don't you come over to my place? That's right, I wonder if second aunt has eaten yet? Li didn't even think about it before agreeing. When she heard that she had eaten, she suddenly felt hungry. She hurriedly smiled and said, we rushed here so early in the morning, how could we have time to eat? Aya, don't starve second aunt and younger sister. Let's go quickly. I'll have someone prepare food, Gu Fengzi said as she supported Li to leave. Fengzi, you're really a good person. I'll have to trouble you. We're all relatives, what's the trouble? Gu Fengzi pursed her lips and smiled. Gu Fengzi and Li had been chatting and laughing with each other since the beginning. Luya opened her mouth a few times to say something, but she couldn't get a word in. Now that she saw that Gu Fengzi was about to take Li away, Luya was really anxious. Li was originally someone who didn't know how to act, and Gu Fengzi was so evil. If she really brought her to Peony Park, who knows what she would ask Li and say? Luya couldn't care less about the rules and hurriedly went forward to stop her. She smiled and said, second old mistress, young mistress might be back soon. Why don't you come with me to Ning Garden to see her first? Li didn't have a good impression of Luya. Not only Luya, but she was also jealous and hateful of Gu Fengzi. Even she couldn't explain the contradiction in her heart. At this moment, she had finally met a true young miss who was respectful and flattering to her. Madame Li's vanity had reached its peak. She liked this feeling too much and enjoyed it too much. How could she let it go? She said, Wan Yang isn't back yet, right? Since Fengzi is so enthusiastic, I'll go over to her place first. When Wan Yang is back, you can ask Wan Yang to come and fetch us. Li deliberately wanted to show off in front of Gu Fengzi that she was Sang Wan's elder, so she immediately instructed Luya. Gu Fengzi was laughing so hard that her stomach hurt. She also smiled and nodded. That's right, Luya, isn't it good for second aunt to come over to my place to sit and chat? Sister isn't here now, so won't she be bored in Ning Garden? Why? Afraid that I'll bully second aunt or be rude to her. No. Fengzi, you're so good to me, so why would I think that? Li quickly waved her hands. Miss Gu, Luya was not willing to let her go, so she said to Gu Fengzi, Ning Garden also has a small kitchen, so Miss Gu need not worry about young mistress's relatives. We servants will serve them, otherwise, if young mistress scolds us for being lazy, we won't be able to bear the consequences. Please forgive us, Miss Gu. If Miss Gu really likes second old mistress, then we'll report to young mistress and accompany second old mistress to be a guest at Miss Gu's place. Gu Fengzi sighed softly and said softly, Luya, what's wrong with you? Second aunt and I hit it off, so I'm only inviting her to my place to sit and chat. Why must you stop us? Is this your idea, or sister's? Sister's relatives are also my relatives, so I'll naturally treat them with respect. Besides, I'm helping sister entertain the guests, so sister might even be grateful to me, so why would she blame you? Lon Xiong chimed in, second old mistress is the mistress, and the mistress's matters will naturally be decided by her. How can a servant overstep her authority? When Li heard that, she straightened her chest and frowned as she reprimanded Luya. All right, Luya, you can go back first. I'll sit at Wu Fengzi's place, so there's no need for you to follow me. No matter how much Wan Yang dotes on you, you're still just a servant, so don't meddle too much. In the past, I can't be bothered to say anything, but the Shi family is a big family with rules and regulations. You've been here for quite some time now, so why haven't you learned such a simple principle? Gu Fengzi curled her lips slightly and thought to herself, it can be seen that their relationship isn't that good, but that's good. I'll be able to use it. Luya did not know whether to laugh or cry after hearing her lecture, so she said, Second old mistress, please forgive me. It's not easy for you to come all the way here, so I'm sure you have a lot to say to young mistress. Why don't you follow this servant to Ning Garden? Wouldn't it be more convenient? Young mistress has always disliked troubling others. If she knows that this servant is careless and has caused you trouble for Miss Gu, she will definitely be unhappy. Li suddenly hesitated. She rushed over to look for Sang-won, so of course, she had something to say. If Sang-won was really unhappy, would she still help her? Although it felt good to be flattered, compared to the actual benefits, she still had a sense of propriety. You lass, you're becoming more and more eloquent. Big sister has always been gentle and obedient, so why would she be unhappy? Second aunt, let's go. At most, I'll accompany you to see big sister and personally tell her that I was the one who pulled you over to relieve your boredom. I'm sure big sister won't have any objections. Gu Fengzi saw that Li was hesitating and pulled her away. Li was in a dilemma and could not bear to leave. She nodded and smiled. All right, I'll go with you. Luya, don't talk too much. Let's go back. Second madam. Luya was anxious and stepped forward to stop her. Impudent! Gu Fengzi shouted in a low voice. She opened her mouth to speak but held back. She only tilted her head to look at Li. Li saw that Luya was not tactful and became angry. She glared at her and said, "What? You're just a servant, and you're trying to meddle in your master's affairs? Is this what Wan Nyong taught you? Where I go is none of your business. Go away." Luya, what happened? A deep middle-aged woman's voice came from the side. It was Mama Li with two young maidservants. Mama Li had finished her business and returned to Ning Garden. She heard from the maidservants that the young mistress's relatives had come and that Luya had gone to pick them up. She didn't care at first and only ordered the maidservants to carefully look around the courtyard and the house to see if there was anything that needed to be cleaned up. This was to prevent the young mistress from losing face when the guests came. Who knew that after waiting for a while, she still did not see Luya come back. Based on her experience, Mama Li knew that something must have happened. She hurriedly brought people to look for her. Coincidentally, they met Gu Fengzi, who was about to leave with Li and her daughter. Luya stepped forward to stop them. Godmother. Luya saw that Mama Li had arrived and immediately let out a sigh of relief. She quickly went forward to explain the situation and then stood to the side to listen to Mama Li's decision. Mama Li smiled and said, "Miss Biao, how can we trouble Miss Biao to take care of the young mistress's relatives? Isn't this clearly not giving young mistress any face? Second old Mistress Gu, you should follow me to Ning Garden. Young mistress should be back soon." When Gu Fengzi saw that Mama Li had arrived, she knew that she would not be able to get what she wanted. Seeing that Mama Li had spoken so harshly, Gu Fengzi's expression changed slightly and she lowered her head with a look of grievance. Li was unhappy when she saw that. When she heard Luya call Mama Li godmother, she immediately categorized her as being in the same group as Luya. When she saw Gu Fengzi's grievance, she felt disgusted and frowned. Mama, I was the one who wanted to go with Fengzi. What does it have to do with you? You're just a servant. Second old Mistress Gu. Luya hurriedly interrupted her and said, "My godmother is old mistress's nanny. She is also young master's nanny. Young master and young mistress have always respected her. She is not a servant." Chapter 221. Luya. Mama Li waved her hand to stop Luya. She smiled at Li and said, "Second Madam Li wasn't wrong. The old slave is just a servant. Thanks to eldest young master and eldest young mistress, the matters of Ning Garden are mostly handled by the old slave. Your eldest young mistress relative, so the old slave should naturally invite you to Ning Garden to serve him well. If there's anything, wait for eldest young mistress to return before making a fuss. Luya, what are you still standing there for? Hurry and help second Madam Li over." "Yes, godmother." Luya gave a meaningful look. The two maidservants also stepped forward and pulled Li and Sang Yen over. Li opened her mouth to refute, but Mama Li's expression was stern and solemn. For a moment, she was unable to say anything and was pulled away by Luya. After walking for about 10 steps, Li finally regained her senses. She turned her head and waved at Gu Fengzi as she shouted, "Fengzi, you go back first. I'll come see you when I have time. Gu Fengzi and Lan Xiang laughed and nodded at her. This foolish countrywoman is very interesting. I didn't expect eldest young mistress to have such an interesting relative. Lan Xiang mocked. Gu Fengzi snorted and coldly said, Sang Wan, that slut, is originally a crude country girl. Having a relative like this is a good match for her. After saying that, she brought Lan Xiang back to Peony Park. She hated herself for speaking too much. If she knew that Mama Li would come, she would have pulled Li away. Mama Li and Luya were startled by Li's shout. Mama Li had lived under the influence of rules all her life and disliked people who did not follow the rules. She glanced at Li and frowned slightly. She did not want to say anything, but she could not help but stop and say, Second Madam Li, if you have anything to say to Miss Gu, just instruct a maidservant to pass the message. If you shout so loudly, she may not be able to hear you. Secondly, don't you find it tiring? Thirdly, if the servants hear you, it won't be dignified enough. Also, even if you get along well with Miss Gu, don't call her by her name. Our old mistress has always doted on Miss Gu. I'm afraid that old mistress will be unhappy if she sees you calling her young mistress. Li was unhappy and said, It was Fengzi who asked me to call her that. Can't I do that? Even young mistress has never called Miss Gu by her name. Mama Li said with a straight face. Li was embarrassed and said, Oh. She did not say anything else. Entering the Ning garden, they passed through the main hall and went around the corridor on the left. They saw the flowers were flourishing, colorful, the buildings were tall and imposing, imposing and imposing. The doors and windows were brand new, the vermilion paint was eye-catching. On the corridor's whitewashed walls, there were various types of leaky windows, exquisitely carved and lifelike. Li felt that her pair of eyes were not enough to take in everything. She was so engrossed that she almost bumped into a pillar in front of her. She was secretly envious. Mama Li led the mother and daughter directly into the warm room where Sang Wan usually lived. She invited them to sit on the soft couch and ordered the maidservants to fetch water and serve them tea. Luya had already ordered the servants to prepare 2 bowls of noodles and pushed Mama Li away to rest. It's fine with me here. Godmother, go and rest. Mama Li didn't really like Li, but Li was Sang Wan's maternal family, so she couldn't say anything. Seeing Luya hurriedly drive her away, she knew what she was thinking. She smiled at her and said, Then you serve them well. Let's wait for young mistress to come back before we make a fuss. She then left. Luya finally let out a sigh of relief and hurriedly went in with a smile. Second madam, third miss, it's not too early or too late. I told the kitchen to make 2 bowls of noodles. Feel free to eat a few mouthfuls. It's not early today, so you probably won't be able to go back. Tonight, I'll make a few more dishes to entertain you. When Li heard Luya say that she was going to make 2 bowls of noodles for her and her mother, she was a bit unhappy. Seeing that Luya was tactful and didn't want to drive her away, she smiled and said, We came all the way here with great difficulty and wanted to stay for a few more days. Luya, do you think Wan Nyong will drive us away? How could young mistress do that? Luya smiled, but she was complaining in her heart. That's right. Wan Nyong has always been a conscientious person. Li smiled and nodded. She looked around the room and praised, The Shi family is really rich. They want me to stay for a few more days to broaden my horizons. We don't have such good cloth even if we wanted to make clothes, but they're actually using it as a tablecloth. Those gold, silver, jade, and porcelain decorations are really beautiful. It's dazzling. Each one of them must be worth a lot of money, right? Luya was afraid that she would have the same thought as her eldest son-in-law, so she smiled and said, It probably isn't cheap. I don't know about that either. These things are all registered in the storehouse, but because of young mistress's status, they were taken out for display. They are changed every season and have to be returned to the storehouse when the time comes. Li made an "oh" sound and drank 2 mouthfuls of tea. She kept looking at the blue and white porcelain teacup with lotus patterns. Not long after, a young maidservant came in with a red lacquer tray. Luya stepped forward to take it and gestured for her to leave. "Second madam, third miss, quickly come and eat," Luya said as she placed 2 bowls of noodles on the small round table. "Actually, we're not that hungry. We'll have to trouble you." Lee pretended to speak as she got up. She was very unhappy in her heart. Who hasn't eaten noodles before? We came all the way here and you didn't even prepare something delicious. You sent us away with a bowl of noodles. You're becoming more and more stingy. When she sat down at the table, she saw the various seasonings in the fine white noodles, such as dried scallops, ham, shrimp, winter bamboo shoots, and shiitake mushrooms. She also saw the fragrant minced meat topping. Smelling the fragrance, she couldn't help but swallow her saliva. She picked up her chopsticks and impatiently took a bite. The noodles were made with the highest quality white flour with eggs added to the broth. Coupled with the cooking skills of the kitchen maids, how could it be the same as the noodles Lee usually ate? Lee couldn't care about anything else. After a few mouthfuls, she felt a bit more energetic. She picked up the bowl and gulped down a few mouthfuls of soup. Wiping her mouth, she turned to Luya and said with a smile, "It's delicious, but it's not spicy enough. Go bring me some chili." "Yes." Luya agreed. She lifted the curtain and went out to instruct a servant. A moment later, she came back with a bowl of chili noodles. Lee scooped a spoonful into the bowl, mixed it, and tasted it. She then added 2 more spoonfuls. The entire bowl was red. Only then did she continue to eat with satisfaction. She said, "The chili in your residence is really not that good. It's not spicy enough." Luya glanced at the red bowl of noodles and felt her scalp go numb. She smiled and said, "The masters in the residence don't eat spicy food. Eldest young master and eldest young mistress also don't eat spicy food." While they were talking, Lee had already swept the large bowl of noodles clean. She even drank the soup until there wasn't a drop left. Seeing that there were some minced scallions and minced meat at the bottom and edge of the bowl, Lee picked them up with her chopsticks and ate them. She smiled at Luya and said, "Is there more? Give me another bowl." Although Luya was not unfamiliar with Lee, she had never seen Lee like this. She was stunned for a moment and did not respond to Lee's words. "What? You can't even eat another bowl of noodles? The Sher family can't be so stingy, right?" Lee was unhappy. No, how could that be? Luya secretly wiped her sweat. Why didn't she know that this second old mistress could eat so much? "It's dinner time soon. If you eat too much, how can you eat dinner? Why don't I ask the servants to bring 2 plates of desserts for second old mistress?" "That's fine too." Madam Lee nodded. Seeing that her daughter was still leisurely eating, she couldn't help but scold, "Why are you so slow in everything you do? Hurry up and eat. The kitchen is waiting to clean up the dishes." Sang Yen had been unhappy ever since she came in. Although the noodles were fragrant, they tasted like wax in her mouth. After being scolded by her mother, how could she continue eating? She put down her chopsticks and said with a bitter face, I'm done eating. I don't want to eat anymore." "You don't want to eat anymore?" Lee frowned. "What a waste. Hurry up and eat more. You didn't eat lunch. Aren't you hungry?" "I really have enough." Sang Yen shook her head. "If you don't want to eat, I'll eat." "It's a waste." After saying that, Li She stretched out her hand and pulled the bowl in front of Sang Yen over. She lowered her head and finished the bowl in a few bites. Then, she let out a sigh of relief and smiled at Luya. "Luya, quickly bring the snacks over." "Mother." Sang Yen pulled Li a little embarrassedly and looked at Luya embarrassedly. "What are you doing? Luya is not an outsider." "So what if she's an outsider? It's such a pity to waste such good noodles." "Luya, don't you think so?" Li glared at her daughter with dissatisfaction. "Second old mistress is right. I'll go get the desserts now. You wait here." Luya smiled and didn't think that Li's actions were inappropriate. He also came from the countryside and naturally knew how precious food was. However, Li's attitude made him look down on her. Luya secretly prayed in her heart, "Young mistress, please come back soon. This servant really doesn't dare to let others serve this second old mistress. It'll really make a fool of herself." After a while, Luya brought in 3 to 4 plates of sweet pastries such as osmanthus cake, water chestnut cake, golden date cake, and other sweet pastries. She placed them in front of Lee with a smile. As for the 2 empty bowls, she put them aside and thought that she would wash them when there was no one in the kitchen at night. Luya really didn't want to take the bowls back since the bottom of the bowls were so shiny. She would be laughed at behind her back. Hee, rich people are really different. Says he. Look at how exquisite and beautiful these pastries are. Just by smelling it, it's so fragrant. Lee held a piece of crystal-clear water chestnut cake in her hand and praised. Luya was afraid that she would sweep everything away again, so the pastries she brought were all sweet and full. Seeing this, she hurriedly smiled and said, "First, old mistress, try 1 or 2 pieces of each and see how it tastes. There'll be more delicious food tonight. I've already instructed the kitchen to prepare the dishes, so you have to leave some space in your stomach. When you go back, I'll pack a few more boxes of these pastries for you to take back and slowly taste." Hee, that's good, that's good. When Lee heard that there would be more delicious food tonight and that the pastries could be taken away, she became much more refined and stopped after tasting 1 piece of each. Chapter 222. Luya was about to let the 2 of them sit down and rest, but who knew that Lee's mouth would not stop. She pulled Luya, sighed, and began to complain, talking endlessly about the family's matters. Luya was annoyed listening to her, but it was not convenient for her to leave, so she could only answer perfunctorily. Lee, on the other hand, became more and more enthusiastic. Luya could not bear to listen to her. "Eldest young mistress is back." A young maidservant's clear shout finally sounded from the door, followed by the sound of footsteps and rustling of clothes. "Wan Nyong is back. Wan Nyong." Lee's eyes lit up, and she got up to rush out. "Second madam." Luya quickly pulled her back and said, "You're an elder, so it's only right for you to wait for eldest young mistress to come and greet her. If you go out like this, people will laugh at you for not knowing the rules." Lee thought that it was true, so she coughed twice and pretended to sit down. She raised her head and urged Luya, "Quickly go and call Wan Nyong in." "Yes, I'll go right now." "Second madam, wait here and don't go out. Eldest young mistress has come back from being a guest, so she has to change her clothes and wash her face before coming to see you. Please wait patiently." Luya lifted the curtain and went out after saying that. When Sangwon came back, she heard a maidservant quietly inform her that second madam and third miss had come. She was so shocked that her expression almost changed. After accompanying Wong back to the main courtyard to settle down, she hurriedly rushed to Ning Garden. When she saw Luya come out to greet her with a normal expression, Sangwon's hanging heart finally settled down. "Where are my second aunt and third cousin?" Sangwon did not wait for Luya to greet her and asked. Luya supported her and said with a smile, "Young mistress, please change your clothes first. Second madam and third miss are doing well in the warm room. Young mistress, don't worry." Sangwon nodded with a smile and entered the inner room to change her clothes. She smiled at Luya and said, "Fortunately, you didn't go with me today. Otherwise, I don't know what would have happened." "Isn't that so? What a coincidence." Luya smiled and dismissed the maidservant. She helped Sangwon change her clothes by herself. She lowered her voice and said, "Good Kai, this servant is here today. Fortunately, Godmother came later. When I brought second madam and the others in, I didn't expect to meet Miss Biao on the way." As Luya spoke, she briefly recounted what had happened at that time and said, "This servant will tell young mistress so that young mistress will have a plan in mind. Otherwise, young mistress would still be kept in the dark if Miss Biao were to do anything." Sangwon was shocked and angry. Her palms were slightly cold. She gritted her teeth and said, "This woman is simply crazy. She's capable of doing anything. Today, it's all thanks to you and Mama. If second aunt was really taken away by her, it would be terrible. Sang Wan didn't dare to imagine what would happen if Gu Fengzi took away Li. Li didn't have a brain, and with her mouth, what couldn't she get out of Gu Fengzi? At that time, if she led Li to her mother-in-law, Sang Wan shivered slightly and said, "We can't let them stay here. We have to send them away tomorrow morning." Luya smiled and said, "Young mistress, then you have to think of a way. What don't you know about our second madam? Since she's here, how can she leave so easily? She told this servant today that she wanted to see the world and stay in the manor for a few more days." Sang Wan's eyes flashed slightly and said, "I'll think of a way." It wasn't easy for her to stabilize her hard-earned status and identity today. She definitely couldn't allow this nondescript Madam Li to smear her name with a thick stroke of black ink. The two of them had always treated her family harshly and didn't show any kindness. Now, they were only relying on that little bit of blood relationship. She didn't owe them anything, so it wasn't worthwhile for her to be implicated by them. Sang Wan hurriedly changed into a set of green clothes with grape-like patterns. She took off the complicated and expensive jewelry and loosely tied her hair into a simple hairstyle. She inserted 2 jade hairpins embedded with gems and then came out with Luya's hand. She suddenly stopped and said to Luya, "Mama, she." Luya smiled bitterly. When second madam and third miss came in, it was this servant who received them. Mama went to busy herself with other things. This servant doesn't dare to let her say anything in front of Mama. It's too embarrassing. Sang Wan laughed and gently tapped Luya's forehead with her finger. This sly girl is becoming more and more clever. The master and servant lifted the curtain and entered the warm room. Before Sang Wan could say, "Second aunt," she saw Li rush over like a gust of wind and tightly grab her hand. "Wan Yong Ah, you're finally back. Second aunt has been waiting and looking forward to seeing you." "Second aunt, quickly sit down and talk. I didn't know that second aunt was coming. Today, I went out with my mother-in-law as a guest. I've made second aunt wait." Sang Wan pulled her hand back and sat down on the main seat. "AI, we haven't seen each other in a long time. Sit down and I'll tell you slowly. There's a lot to say." Li smiled and wanted to sit down next to Sang Wan without thinking. Luya hurriedly stopped her and said with a smile, "Second madam, that's eldest young master's seat. Please sit here." As she said this, she raised her hand and guided her to sit down next to Sang Wan. Li said unhappily, "My niece-in-law isn't here right now. I want to get closer to Wan Yang, so why can't I sit in this empty seat? You're becoming more and more daring. Wan Yang, look, she even dares to pick on me." Li only felt disappointed. She angrily glared at Luya and turned to Sang Wan, asking Sang Wan to make a decision for her. Luya opened her mouth and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. When it came to people like Li, there was really no one to reason with. "Second aunt, Luya has always been as outspoken as my sister-in-law. She says whatever she wants to say. Second aunt, why do you have to be so calculative with her? Please sit down. You must have something to say since you came all the way here, right?" Sang Wan smiled and raised her hand to indicate the guest seat next to her. It was obvious that she had the same intention as Luya to let her sit there. Li said, "Oh," in embarrassment and didn't say anything. She went over and sat down. She could ignore Luya's words, but she didn't dare to ignore Sang Wan's words. Sang Yen stood behind Li and her head was almost buried in her chest. She fidgeted with her fingers uneasily and her face was red with embarrassment. Sang Wan saw her like this and couldn't bear it. She smiled and said, "Third sister, you also sit down. There are no outsiders here, so there's no need to stand on ceremony." "That's right. Your own sister isn't an outsider. Why are you standing there like a block of wood? Hurry up and greet your sister. You're getting more and more stupid. You don't even know how to call her sister." "AI, Wan Yang, don't lower yourself to her level. This wretched girl is too timid to see the world." Li turned her head and glared at Sang Yen. She scolded her again. Sang Yen was so ashamed that she didn't know where to put her hands and feet. She had no choice but to come out from behind her mother. She timidly glanced at Sang Wan and hurriedly lowered her head again. She softly called out, sister. Sang-won suddenly felt that she was a little pitiful. She didn't know if she was lucky or unlucky to have a mother like Lee. If she was lucky, then everything was arranged by Lee since she was young. With Lee's protection, she had no worries and didn't need to think about anything. There was a time when Sang-won was very envious of her. If she was unlucky, then her current personality was obviously Lee's masterpiece. If there was a day when Lee wasn't around, then she would be like a little chick without the protection of a hen's wings. Would she be able to live an independent life? Younger sister, sit down. Sang-won smiled. Sang-yen had already been pulled to sit down by Lee. This girl is too timid. Sang-won saw that Lee was about to start nagging and scolding Sang-yen again. She hurriedly coughed and interrupted with a smile. That's right, second aunt, why don't you tell me what you're here for today? AI. Lee swallowed the words she was about to say. She sighed and began to complain to Sang-won. Won-young-ah, your second aunt's life is really bitter. Ever since I entered your Sang family, I've worked hard for this family. Even if I don't have any merits, I should at least have worked hard, right? I never thought that your second uncle would be so heartless. When he saw that I was old and had become a haggard old woman, he had crooked thoughts and took in a concubine. What about having a son and continuing the family line? Those were all lies. He just thought that I was old and had a change of heart. That man, there's not a single good thing. They're all heartless and unscrupulous. Just because he had some spare money in his hands, he began to play around and threw his wife and children to the back of his head. Lee began to pour out her grievances, scolding Ryo Kuwabara for being heartless. She gave several examples, such as how she had worked hard in the past and how she had worked hard for this family. Now, that vixen was lazy, a wastrel, and even dared to talk back to her. Yet, he was actually protecting that vixen, etc. Luya stood beside Sang-won with her hands hanging by her side. When she heard the first sentence, she silently added the second sentence in her heart. She couldn't help but secretly praise Lee for having a good memory. Before her young mistress returned, she had already complained to her once. Now that she was complaining again, it was almost exactly the same. Sang-won felt extremely awkward when she heard it. She thought to herself, what does the grudges between you two have to do with me? Could it be that you want me to stand up for you and uphold justice for you? You're thinking too highly of me. Sang-won wanted to interrupt Lee a few times, but she saw that she was eloquent like a river. Just as she called out, second aunt, she was interrupted by Lee's, Won-young-ah, you don't know. Sang-won simply couldn't be bothered to interrupt her. She held the teacup in a daze. If she wanted to say it, then let her say it. After all, there were no outsiders here. Mother. Actually, the one who felt the most uncomfortable was Sang-yen. Hearing her mother talk about her biological father's ugly deeds in full detail in front of her cousin, her face started to burn. Hearing her mother's words becoming more and more unbearable, she finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She gently tugged at her mother's sleeve and begged with tears in her eyes, Mother, don't say it anymore. Why can't I say it when he did it? Lee finally found someone to pour out her grievances. How could she let it go so easily? She was filled with grief and indignation when she was interrupted by her own daughter. She was abnormally angry and poked Sang-yan's head a few times, causing Sang-yan's head to shake. You heartless wretched girl! Have you forgotten who your mother is? Who raised you and protected you? You're actually siding with your heartless father. Little ingrate, I've raised you for nothing. Chapter 223. Mother. I didn't. Sang-yen was ashamed. In front of Sang-won, she felt so embarrassed that she couldn't back down. She covered her face with both hands and started crying. Second aunt, don't you know third sister's character? How can she feel good if you accuse her like this? Stop talking about it. Sang-won persuaded and gave Luya a look. Luya went forward and patted Sang-yan's back gently. She whispered, Third missy, don't cry. There are a lot of servants outside. If they hear you, They will laugh at you. Sang Yen paused and immediately stopped crying. Second aunt, didn't second uncle just take a concubine? You've been with second uncle for most of your life. Do you think he would divorce you? Why are you so angry? Sang Wan smiled. The anger in your heart has subsided. Let's not talk about those things anymore. Even if you tell me, I can't do anything about it. Li scoffed. Divorce me? He dares. I just feel bitter in my heart. Wan Yang, our family is different from yours. The Shi family is rich. It doesn't matter if your niece-in-law takes in 8 or 10 concubines. But how can we, a country family, have so much spare money? Our Yan's dowry hasn't even been prepared yet. His old man actually spent nearly 100 taels of silver to buy a vixen. Isn't he deliberately angering me to death? Sang Wan couldn't help but feel angry when she heard this. Her hand that was holding the handkerchief tightly trembled. Is this something an elder should say? Why does it sound so ear-piercing? Lu Ya's face was also filled with displeasure. Her face sank as she glared at Li. Young master and young mistress have such a good relationship, but second old mistress is so good. She opened her mouth and said 8 or 10 concubines. She herself doesn't like concubines, but she thinks that it's not a big deal for other families to have a few more concubines. What kind of mentality is this? Li was still complaining when she suddenly felt something strange. She glanced at Sang Wan and then at Luya. Her voice unconsciously became softer until it disappeared. She was a little confused. No matter how stupid she was, she could tell that Sang Wan and Luya were angry, but she didn't know why they were angry. Li felt a burst of anger. Thinking that she had a request to make, she had no choice but to suppress the anger in her heart. She laughed dryly and said, Wan Yang, second aunt doesn't know how to speak. If I say something wrong, please don't take issue with second aunt. Sigh, forget it, let's not talk about it. There's no point in talking too much about those things. Second aunt is just complaining. After talking to you, I feel much better. I won't say any more. I won't say any more. Sang Wan forced a smile and glanced at her. She lowered her head and took a sip of tea without saying anything. She thought to herself, you feel much better in your heart, but you don't forget to cause trouble for others. Does our first branch have a natural enmity with your second branch? Every time we meet, you won't let us have a good time. Sang Wan felt a wave of disgust, but she couldn't help but laugh at herself. She thought to herself, it's not like this is the first time I've found out what kind of person she is, so why bother bickering with her? That would be truly stupid. It's already quite late. Second aunt must be hungry, right? Luya, send someone to the kitchen to take a look. If the dishes are ready, then set the table. Yes, young mistress. Luya acknowledged and retreated. When Li saw that Sang Wan's face finally revealed a smile, she knew that she wasn't angry with her. She then breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly said with a smile, Good, good. Then let's eat first. We'll talk after eating. The dishes were already prepared. After Luya had the servants set the table in the dining room, she dismissed the maidservants and then came over to invite Sang Wan and Li. During the meal, only Luya served at the side. Looking at the table full of exquisite, beautiful, and fragrant dishes, Li's eyes couldn't help but shine and salivate even though she wasn't very hungry. When Sang Wan greeted them, she hurriedly pulled her daughter to sit down and couldn't wait to eat. She beamed with joy and praised the dishes. Sang Yen secretly glanced at Sang Wan and saw that her behavior was relaxed and calm, compared to her own mother who was like a hungry tiger coming down the mountain. Sang Yen secretly smiled bitterly. She thought to herself that she had already lost face long ago, so it didn't matter if she lost face now. As Li ate, she praised the dishes while constantly asking Luya what this was, what that was, and how to make it. Luya just casually answered and perfunctorily. Halfway through the meal, Li suddenly stopped moving her chopsticks and raised her head to look at Sang Wan and asked curiously, Wan Yong don't you have other maidservants here to serve you? Why is Luya always at the side? Luya secretly glanced at her and thought to herself, how can other people stand your attitude? If they see it, Who knows how many witty words they'll make to make fun of you tomorrow. I'm afraid that even young mistress will be made fun of by others. You still have the nerve to ask. Seeing the dripping soup on the table, the bones, fish bones, ginger slices, garlic skin, and other things on the ground, Luya couldn't help but feel annoyed. In a while, she would have to clean up first before calling the maidservants to come in and clean up. The others have also been tired for the day, so I let them all rest. Besides, I'm used to Luya serving me closely. Sang-won said with a smile. That's true. Lee nodded in a serious manner. This servant, she's been serving me since I was young, so I know her well. The maidservants of large families are the most crafty. If they're not careful, they'll make trouble for their masters. Especially for someone like you, who comes from a small family, I'm afraid they won't put you in their eyes. Shouldn't you be more careful and be more careful? It's better to use Luya. Second, madam. Luya couldn't bear it anymore and said with a sullen face, You're already so old, don't you know that trouble comes from careless talk? What will people think of our young mistress if they hear you say such things? Young mistress, do you still want to be a person? You maidservant, you dare to lecture me? Lee was so angry that she pointed at Luya with her chopsticks and said to Sang-won, Won-young, look, she dares to talk to me like that. Sang-won gritted her teeth in hatred. She only hated that she was younger, otherwise, she would have given her a good attitude. If these words fell into the ears of the maidservants, just like what Luya said, what would they think of her? Second aunt, those words aren't good. Moreover, our family isn't so complicated. You're thinking too much. Let's eat quickly. I think you're tired today, so rest early after eating. Sang-won said indifferently without even looking at her. Mother, why are you being so nosy about cousin's family matters? Let's stop talking and eat. Sang-yen finally spoke her first smooth sentence ever since she entered the Sher household. Sang-won's face became very ugly. She was really shocked. Lee was unhappy that Sang-won didn't stand up for her, but she also felt her anger. She laughed and said, I'm just worried about Won-young, so I couldn't help but say a few words. Won-young, don't think too much. Hee, let's eat, let's not talk about it. After the meal, Sang-won led the two of them back to the warm room. Mama Lee had already sent the maidservants away, so only she and Xing-ji were in the room to serve them. She raised the curtain and led them into the warm room. She hurriedly asked someone to bring them tea to rinse their mouths. Lee only thought that it was tea for drinking. She burped and waved her hand, saying, I just ate, and my stomach is full with rejong. I don't want to drink tea yet. Put it here, there's no need. The maidservant pursed her lips and smiled, saying, Madam, this tea is for rinsing your mouth, not for drinking. Hee, is that so? Your family is very particular. Lee laughed and glanced at Sang-won. She then took the tea and did as she was told. Young mistress, old slave has already asked someone to prepare a guest room. There's also hot water in the kitchen. When Madam and the others go back, I'll ask someone to send it over. Mama Lee stepped forward and said with a smile. Thank you, Mama. I forgot about this matter. Sang-won thought for a moment and said with a smile, Tonight, we'll clean up the side room and let my second aunt and cousin stay. There's no need to use the guest room. Mama, you've been busy all day. You should go and rest. It's enough to have Luya and Xing-ji. Yes, old slave will go first. Mama Lee curtsied and retreated. Lee didn't have a good impression of Mama Lee. She saw her glance at her before she left, as if she had some hidden meaning. Lee was even more unhappy. She said to Sang-won, This Mama is the wet nurse of my nephew's son-in-law? The wet nurse of this rich family is quite arrogant. She acts like a real mother. Won-young, you really have a good temper. You treat her so. Second aunt. Sang-won's voice became stern. She stared at Lee and said, Mama is the wet nurse of eldest young master. She worked hard to take care of eldest young master. Even in front of my mother-in-law, eldest young master is very respectful to her. Second aunt, don't talk nonsense. Li opened her mouth and stared at Sang-won. She was speechless for a long time. She was originally thinking about how to tell Sang-won about what happened today so that Sang-won could help her teach Mama Li a lesson. Who knew that Sang-won would protect her first? Li couldn't help but feel a little flustered. However, there was nothing she could do. She could only cough and drink tea to cover it up. Sang-won felt that if she argued with her over this, she would simply be looking for trouble. She calmed down and said, "Second aunt, why did you come here today? Quickly say it. Once you're done, go back to your room and rest. I've asked someone to prepare a carriage. I'll send second aunt back tomorrow morning. If second aunt doesn't go back, will the family really feel relieved? Are you really not worried that second uncle will be instigated by that concubine to do something again?" Li didn't speak for a long time. She originally wanted to stay for a few more days, but when the words reached her mouth, she couldn't say it. When Sang Yen heard this, she secretly sighed in relief. If she really stayed in the She family for a few more days, with her mother's personality, who knew what kind of joke she would make? She felt as if she was sitting on pins and needles. "Mother, cousin is right. If you have something to say, quickly say it. Cousin, she will help you think of a way. There are so many things at home. How can we leave them behind? It's the busy season right now, so we should hurry back." Sang Yen hurriedly advised. That's fine too." Li agreed unhappily. She smiled and said, "Wan Yang, after the busy season, I'll bring a yen to see you again." Sang-won vaguely said, "Second aunt, next time you want to come, have someone send a letter to say hello first. Wait for my reply before coming again. Otherwise, how can things be like today? Fortunately, Luya didn't go out with me today." Li hurriedly smiled and said, "Today, I met your family's Miss Gu, Fongzi. She's quite a good person. She even invited me over for a chat. Wan Yang, you have to help me say goodbye to her tomorrow. When I return, I'll go see her again." Chapter 224. Second Aunt. Sang-won's face sunk as she coldly said, "It's best if you don't call out Miss Gu's name and don't appear to be so intimate with her. You don't understand the manners matters, so don't blindly interfere. I'll only tell you one thing, stay away from Miss Gu. If you see her next time, stay far away from her. Do you understand?" Mentioning today's matter, she was filled with anger. She didn't know if Li's brain was made of grass or wood chips. She wasn't a noble lady, nor was she a person of virtue and prestige. Wearing the clothes of a rural woman, she would be an ordinary person no matter where she went. Gu Fongzi had only met her for the first time. If she didn't have any other intentions, how could she be so intimate with her? Why is this? I think she's a good person. She speaks in a friendly manner and treats people with courtesy. Li was very confused. How could she believe Sang-won's words? Sang-won didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She wanted to cry, but had no tears. She and Gu Fongzi's grudges were only half revealed to her sister-in-law, Fong. It was even more impossible for her to tell Li. She dared to guarantee that if she said one sentence to Li today, once she returned to the countryside, she would say 100 sentences. Then, she would just wait for her to be discredited. Don't talk about this anymore. In short, remember my words. I can't explain the matters of the manor clearly to you. Some things will only invite trouble, so you just need to remember this. Let's talk about business. Why did you come looking for me today? Sang-won suppressed the impatience in her heart as she spoke. Li saw her suddenly become strict. That high and mighty aura made her feel a bit timid. She was in a daze and realized that there was a deep gap between her and Sang-won. She was in a position that she would never be able to reach in this lifetime. She could no longer do whatever she wanted to her like before, or act like an elder in front of her and order her around. Li suddenly felt a little dejected, but there was nothing she could do. She sighed and glanced at Sang Yen. "Wan Yang, second aunt has done many things to let you down in the past. Can you be magnanimous and not be calculative with second aunt? What happened in the past was all second aunt's fault. Second aunt will apologize to you. Second aunt will listen to whatever you say. The next time second aunt sees Miss Gu, second aunt will stay far away from her. Wan Yang, are you satisfied? Sang Wan didn't expect her to say something like this. She was startled for a moment. Her heart was slightly moved, but she still sighed inwardly. Second aunt was still the same second aunt from the past. Even if she gave in and said nice things to her now, she was still the same second aunt from the past. As the saying goes, it's easier to change mountains and rivers than to change one's nature. Sang Wan didn't expect her to really repent. If she really did repent, she wouldn't have said those words to Sang Wan. She didn't mention Sang Hong, Fong, Sang Yufei, and the others. Did she do many things to let her down? She even let down her 2 nephews. Those years, she took joy in other people's misfortune, watched from the sidelines, spread rumors, and took advantage of others. Sang Wan remembered it all clearly. If it wasn't for a powerful sister-in-law who went against her, she was afraid that her family's property would have already been taken away by her husband and wife. Those things are all in the past. Second aunt, why are you still bringing him up? Sang Wan said indifferently. Right. It's all in the past. Now that you're living such a rich life, it's clear that good people will be rewarded. Li gave a sigh of relief and quickly nodded. She then sighed. Second aunt only has your third sister in this life. Second aunt's heart can't let go of her if she doesn't have a good home. Wan Yang, now that you have a lot of connections and know a lot of good people, can you see if you can find a suitable family for Ah Yen? If Ah Yen has a good home, then I can rest assured. In the future, I can also help you out. This marriage relationship is more reliable than anything else. Mother, what are you talking about? Sang Yan's face turned red and she lowered her head, almost burying it in her chest. She never thought that after her mother and father had a big fight over the new concubine, they brought her to find her cousin because of her marriage. This is your cousin, not an outsider. What are you embarrassed about? Li Shi unhappily glared at Sang Yen and pushed her. Hurry up and beg your cousin. She'll help you find a good family. You'll be able to eat and drink well for the rest of your life and you won't have to worry about anything. Sang Wan was also stunned for a moment. She originally thought that Li came to complain to her because she wanted a sum of money. Since she came to her door, as long as she asked, there was no reason for her to refuse. What she never thought was that she was actually talking about Sang Yan's marriage. Sang Wan suddenly felt a headache coming on as she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sang Yan's parents were still alive and she was a married aunt. Moreover, Sang Yen and her were of the same generation. For her to decide Sang Yan's marriage, it was ridiculous. She really didn't know what Li was thinking. Mother. Sang Yen was so ashamed that she spoke with a nasal voice. Her eyes turned red and she wished that she could find a hole to hide in. This was too embarrassing. If she knew that her mother brought her here today to talk about this matter, she wouldn't have come even if she was beaten to death. What was this? Don't pull me, quickly say a few good words to your cousin. Li shook off Sang Yan's hand and pushed her forward. How could Sang Yen be willing? She twisted her body and ran to a corner to stand with her back facing them. She bit her lip and tears uncontrollably rolled down her face. Stupid girl, you're so disappointing. Li gritted her teeth and hurriedly smiled at Sang Wan. Wan Yong Ah Yen is always like this. She gets embarrassed at the slightest thing. What's there to be embarrassed about when we're family? It's also fortunate that it's you, Wan Yang, who won't argue with her. Wan Yang, second aunt will leave this matter to you. You must help Ah Yen find a good husband. Second aunt will be grateful for your kindness for the rest of my life. Second aunt, Sang Wan suppressed the shock in her heart and thought for a moment before saying, Second aunt since ancient times, marriage has been decided by the parents. You and second uncle are both healthy and healthy. How can I interfere with cousin's marriage? Second aunt, even if you don't care, I can't not care. If others know, they will say that my hands are too long and reach into my maiden family. Second aunt, forgive me for not being able to help you with this matter. This concerns cousin's happiness for the rest of her life. How many years have I lived? How would I know how to judge people? This responsibility is too heavy and I can't bear it. Moreover, I'm just a young daughter-in-law. How can I inquire about another family's young master? Second aunt, you're making things difficult for me. I see that cousin isn't young anymore. You should find a good family for her. When the time comes, I will personally send a generous gift to add to cousin's dowry. What do you think, second aunt? When Li heard Sang-won's rejection, her boiling hot heart instantly turned cold. A wave of resentment and sourness arose spontaneously, and she was secretly unhappy. She blamed Sang-won for not being considerate. Now that she had become rich, she looked down on her poor relatives and refused to lend a helping hand. She must be afraid that in the future, her daughter would marry better than her and surpass her, and she would be jealous. Li originally wanted to say a few more words, but when she heard Sang-won say that she would personally send a generous gift to add to Sang-yan's dowry, she couldn't bring herself to complain anymore. The only person she could ask for help from now was Sang-won. If Sang-won wasn't willing to help her, what else could she do? If she angered her, she wouldn't even be able to add to her dowry. Wouldn't that be a big loss? If she really was willing to fork out a generous sum of money to add to her daughter's dowry, it would be enough to buy a few hundred mu of fertile land. Her daughter wouldn't have to worry for the rest of her life. Li and Ri-jong were still hesitating when Sang-won smiled and said, "Then it's settled. It's already quite late and second aunt still has to hurry on with the journey tomorrow morning. You should go and rest now. It's rare for you to come over and I don't have anything good to give you. Later, I'll ask Luya to prepare a few pieces of cloth and a few boxes of rouge and face powder for my cousin to use." Li hurriedly smiled and said, "Then I'll have to thank you. I've been worrying about your younger sister's dowry for the past 2 years. With your words, I'm relieved. I want to give her 400 mu of fertile land, but unfortunately, I haven't been able to find a suitable one. How about Wan Nyang help me with this?" Luya rolled her eyes at the side. She thought that second madam really wasn't polite. The moment she opened her mouth, she asked for 400 mu of fertile land and a few thousand taels. Sang-won was also very unhappy. She frowned and said, "When the time comes, I'll help second aunt out however much she needs." "That's right. How is eldest cousin's marriage?" This was originally their family matter and Sang-won didn't want to talk too much about it. However, when she saw how Li only cared about Sang-ro and shamelessly schemed against her, she couldn't help but feel that it was unfair that she didn't mention Sang-ro at all. Li's face immediately showed a disgusted expression and said, "With her bad temper, which good family would want her? I'm also worried. If there was someone who wanted her, even if I had to fork out some money, I'd be more than happy to send her off. I've long stopped caring about her matters. Isn't there still her father? How can I care about so much by myself? 1 yen is enough to worry about." Second aunt's words aren't right. Sang-won smiled and said, "Cousin still calls you mother. If you don't care about her matters, who else will? Second uncle is a man. How would he know about these matters? Second aunt, you have to worry about her. There isn't a family where the eldest daughter doesn't get married but the youngest daughter gets married first. Don't you think so too, second aunt?" Li saw that Sang-won was obviously protecting Sang-ro and her heart immediately became unhappy. She vaguely agreed and a thought flashed through her mind. She patted her head and said, I almost forgot to tell you something big." Li then told her about the last time Sang-won went back and how Ryo Kuwabara and Sang-ro had designs on Shifengju. She added some oil and vinegar and proudly claimed credit. That shameless brat was so happy when she heard her father's words that the corners of her eyes were smiling. "I couldn't stand looking at that vixen," and scratched her face, leaving 2 bloody scars. "Even now, there are still traces of it. Wan Nyang, you're kind and considerate of others. Look, that kind of heartless person is still scheming against you behind your back." Sang-won was shocked and angry. She couldn't say anything for a long time. It seemed that she was really meddling in other people's business. She believed that Li didn't lie to her about this matter. It wasn't impossible for her second uncle to do such a thing. Second aunt was really thinking for Sang Yan's good. She didn't have any thoughts of stuffing her into her side. Chapter 225. Wan Yong, don't doubt me. If you don't believe me, you can ask Yen. Yen was the one who accidentally overheard it and told me about it. Yen has never lied since she was young. Li saw that Sang Wan did not say anything. I didn't expect such a thing to happen. Sang Wan smiled faintly and said, Second aunt, don't worry. When Cousin May gets married, I will definitely give you enough face. Cousin May should indeed find a husband, so you should help her take a look. Otherwise, who knew what kind of troublesome things would happen in the future? What you said makes sense. I'll go back and see if there are any suitable families for her. When Li Shi saw that Sang Wan was still speaking up for Sang Ro, she couldn't help but secretly despise her. She had never seen someone like her before. She's trying to steal your man and you're still helping her. Sang Wan did not have the mood to talk to her anymore. She would never be able to reason with someone like Li as long as she understood her meaning and did not cause trouble. It's getting late. I'll ask Luya to bring you and Cousin May down to rest. Sang Wan said. Madame Li still wanted to say something, but when Sang Yen heard those words, she suddenly felt that there was hope for the torture to end. She didn't care about her embarrassment and hurriedly walked over and pulled on Madame Li's sleeve. Mother, I'm tired. Let's go back and rest. Cousin May must be tired after a busy day. She still has to wake up early tomorrow morning to greet the Shi family's first mistress. Sang Wan could not help but glance at Sang Yen and thought to herself, second aunt and second uncle are so unreliable, but this third sister is so pure. She's much better than her parents. Then we'll go first. Li saw her daughter looking at her pitifully and could not bear to reject her, so she agreed to go. However, she was still thinking about the things that Sang Wan said she would bring back tomorrow. Seeing that Sang Wan looked indifferent and unwilling to say more, she pulled Luya along and said, Didn't Wan Yong say that she has rouge, powder, and cloth for us to bring back? Send it to our room later so that I can tidy it up. Also, don't forget to pack a box of the snacks you mentioned. Mother. Sang Yan's face turned red with shame. Luya held back her helplessness and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She smiled and said, Second madam, don't worry. I'll pack it up later and give it to you early tomorrow. I promise you won't be late. Li had no choice but to let it go. In the warm room, Sang Wan still felt uncomfortable, as if she had swallowed a fly. She stared at the glass lamp at the side for a moment before calling out, Servants come. She ordered for a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone to be prepared. Under the lamp, she wrote a letter to her brother and sister-in-law. Today's situation could not happen a second time. Why did Li suddenly run over? She had to ask her eldest brother and sister-in-law what was going on so that they could be on guard in the future. Early the next morning, Sang Wan personally sent Li and Sang Yen off to the carriage. Seeing the carriage disappear from her sight, Sang Wan secretly let out a sigh of relief. After returning to Ning Garden to wash up and eat breakfast, Sang Wan saw that it was about time and went to pay her respects to Wang. Coincidentally, she bumped into Gu Fengzi at the entrance of the main courtyard and the two went in together. After paying her respects, she sat down and spoke a few words with Wang as usual. Gu Fengzi took a moment to look at Sang Wan and said with a smile, Older sister, yesterday I met your maternal aunt and younger cousin in the garden. Why didn't you bring them to meet your maternal aunt? Sang Wan clenched her fists and secretly thanked her lucky stars that she had sent Li away. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to cover it up. Wang was very surprised. She let out an "oh" and smiled at Sang Wan. Yesterday, the second madam of the in-law came? Wan Yang, why didn't you say so yesterday? Quickly, invite the young miss of the in-law over. I want to meet them too. Wang had met the Sang brothers and Fong before and had a good impression of the Sang family. Hearing that Sang Wan's maternal family had come, she naturally wouldn't neglect them. That's right, older sister. Gu Fengzi also smiled. Yesterday, We met in the garden and I only greeted them. I haven't formally greeted them yet. Sang-won stood up and smiled at Wang. I was just about to tell mother about this, but younger sister coincidentally brought it up first. My second aunt and third cousin were just passing by yesterday. They had other matters to attend to and left early this morning. Yesterday, I wanted to come and tell mother, but I was afraid that mother would be tired from attending the banquet and didn't come. I thought that there would be a chance to meet them in the future, so there's no rush. When Wang heard that Lee and the others had left, she sighed regretfully and smiled. You are really too much. In the end, they are relatives of your maternal family. How could I not meet them when it was their first time coming to visit our family? We were just sitting and chatting, but you have to worry too much. Next time, don't be like this, or they will say that you are neglecting them. Yes, Wan Nyong will remember. This time, I was only thinking that we are not outsiders and didn't have to be so particular. Sang-won smiled and agreed. Wang smiled and nodded, indicating for her to sit down. Gu Fengzi also smiled, but she couldn't help but feel resentful. She didn't need to think to know that if the Sang family's second madam were to meet with her aunt, she would be able to talk to her from the side. There was no need to worry that this dignified and reserved young mistress wouldn't lose face. Unfortunately, that foolish woman had left. Needless to say, it was definitely Sang-won's doing. Gu Fengzi couldn't help but feel angry. If she had known earlier, she would have told her aunt last night. She never expected that Sang-won would be so ruthless. After sitting for a while, Sang-won said her goodbyes and left. She hadn't gone far when she heard someone call out, "Older sister," from behind. It was Gu Fengzi chasing after her. Sang-won stopped in her tracks and turned around to look behind her. Gu Fengzi stepped forward and ordered the servants to leave. She snorted coldly at Sang-won and said lightly, "Older sister's movements are so fast. Could it be that the madam of the in-laws family is shameful? You actually sent her away so early in the morning? I think she is quite interesting, and I think Aunt will like her. It's a pity that I can't bring her to meet Aunt. I want Aunt to know that older sister's relatives are so extraordinary." Sang-won smiled and said, "Second aunt really did have something to do, so she was in a hurry to leave." "Younger sister, why would you say that?" "I didn't know that younger sister and she hit it off. As the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. If I knew that younger sister was so reluctant, I would have asked younger sister to send her off." Gu Fengzi immediately pulled a long face and sneered, "Older sister's ability to feign ignorance is getting better and better. That is older sister's second aunt, so what does she have to do with me? If we are talking about birds of a feather, shouldn't she be in the same group as older sister? No wonder older sister was in a hurry to send her away. If aunt saw her, wouldn't older sister lose face? She would think that older sister is like that in private too." Sang-won said coldly, "It's not up to you to talk about my relatives. Younger sister, if you have such thoughts, why don't you pay more attention to the Gu family? They are younger sister's real relatives. Gu Fengzi, I'm warning you. I know what you wanted to do yesterday. If you continue to be so impudent, don't blame me for being impolite." "Then what?" Gu Fengzi's face sank, and she said coldly, "Sang-won, you first pretended to be a pig to eat the tiger and snatched my big cousin away. Now, you're showing off your strength, using your status to pressure me, and even urging my big cousin to chase me away. When have you ever been courteous to me? Sang-won, you must be content with what you have. This is what I wanted to say to you. Since you want to kill me, don't blame me for being impolite." Sang-won shook her head. "I really have nothing to say to you. You and eldest young master grew up together. You should know his temperament better than I do. If there were true feelings between the two of you, no matter what I do, how could it affect him? And what he wants to do, how could I urge him to do it or make the decision? You're looking down on him too much. You knew that he had an engagement with me, but you still walked so close to him without any hesitation. If you want to blame someone, then you are the one who started it all. No matter what the result is, it's all because of your own actions. You're blaming everything on me. Gu Fengzi, don't you have any shame? Gu Fengzi was stunned for a moment. She stared blankly at Sang Wan. Her mind was buzzing and she couldn't find a single word to refute. Sang Wan didn't pay any more attention to her. She turned around and walked away. Gu Fengzi stood there in a daze. Her trembling hands were tightly clenched. In the silence around her, she could clearly hear her own heartbeat and her slightly disordered breathing. The sun shone brightly above her head. The wind blew gently, and the mottled shadows on the ground swayed slightly. Under the warm spring sun, Gu Fengzi felt cold and dazed. She stared blankly in front of her. The world in her eyes seemed to have changed, becoming illusory. Is it really my fault? Yes, it was my intention to get close to eldest cousin. But what's wrong with that? He's so outstanding and has so much wealth. I admire him, I like him. Is that wrong? He once had me in his heart. It can be seen that he also likes me. But, when did things become like this? Could it be that he never really liked me? Gu Fengzi muttered in her heart. The more she thought about it, the more confused and disheartened she became. Her heart ached and her eyes gradually filled with tears. No, it can't be. It's definitely not like that. Gu Fengzi shook her head. She lifted her handkerchief to wipe away the tears in her eyes. She gritted her teeth and said, Sang Wan, you're talking nonsense. If it wasn't for you, it wouldn't have become like this. Young miss, let's go back. Lon Xiang stood to the side. Seeing her expression changing, suddenly angry, suddenly sad, and suddenly fierce, she couldn't help but worry. She went forward to support her arm. Let go. Gu Fengzi forcefully shook her off. She coldly said, I don't need you to help me. I can walk on my own. She always believed that in this world, the only thing she could rely on was herself. If she wanted something, she had to fight for it. No one would give in to her. Sang Wan thought that after this storm, her days would be peaceful for a while. Unexpectedly, at noon, when she was about to eat lunch, Xiao Chun rushed in with a panicked expression. She didn't wait for the announcement and directly rushed in front of Sang Wan. Young mistress, it's bad, it's bad. Quickly go to young mistress. Something happened to young master. Chapter 226. There was a moment of silence. The chopsticks in Sang Wan's hand fell to the ground and her heart tightened. What did you say? What happened to eldest young master? Sang Wan trembled slightly and almost couldn't stand straight. This news came too suddenly. Something happened to eldest young master? Who said so? Where's the messenger? What exactly happened? Tell me quickly. As they spoke, Mama Li also rushed over. Her face was even uglier than Sang Wan's and her hands kept shaking Xiao Chun. All the maidservants in the house had a huge change in expression and they all stared at Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun was shocked by everyone's reaction and stuttered, unable to say anything. Nanny. Sang Wan resisted the urge to collapse and pulled Mama Li before saying reluctantly, Let's go to mother's. Right. Mama Li hurriedly supported Sang Wan and went out of the door. She staggered and pulled Sang Wan, causing the two to almost fall. All the maidservants in the house screamed in fear. In the main courtyard, the situation was even worse. The moment Sang Wan entered, she saw Chong Huan kneeling in the hall and Wang crying, Fengju. Nanny Jiang, Xiao Li, and the others were bitterly consoling her. It was a gloomy atmosphere. Mother. Sang Wan's nose turned sour and her eyes became moist. She took a few steps forward and knelt beside Wang. Pulling on her sleeve, she held back her tears and said, Mother, don't be like this. If eldest young master knows about this, how will he feel? Mother, what exactly happened? Eldest young master has been doing things outside for a day or two. How can he not have a plan in his heart? With the experienced servants by his side, no matter how big the matter is, he will definitely be able to turn misfortune into blessing. Mother, don't be sad. Old mistress. Young mistress is right. Eldest young master will definitely be able to turn misfortune into blessing. If you fall ill from crying, won't eldest young master be distressed when he comes back? Nanny Jiang also hurriedly tried to persuade her. Jean Huan did not expect Wang She's reaction to be so big and was momentarily stunned. When he saw Sang Wan inadvertently glaring at him, it was as if he had just woken up from a dream. He hurriedly crawled forward and kowtowed a few times before sobbing. This lowly one did not speak clearly and frightened old mistress. Old mistress, don't worry, there's a famous doctor looking after him. Young master will definitely be fine. The injuries on his body are just superficial wounds. Really? Wang stopped crying and looked at Chong Huan with sparkling eyes. Yes, yes. Chong Huan hurriedly said, How many brains do I have to deceive first, madam? Fengju, my son. You must come back safely. Otherwise, I don't want to live anymore. Wang She covered her face and began to cry again. Nanny Jiang and the others secretly sighed in relief. They knew that her crying meant that she had regained her composure. Mama Li was also crying. She went forward to persuade Wang with Nanny Jiang and the others. It wasn't easy to persuade her. Wang wiped her tears and saw that Sang Wan was still kneeling beside her. She held her arm and said, Wan Yang, quickly get up. Don't cry. Sang Wan stood up as instructed. Upon hearing those words, tears rolled down her cheeks like pearls from a broken necklace before finally stopping. What exactly happened? Tell me in detail. Wang ordered Sang Wan to sit down. She calmed herself down and asked Chong Huan again. Aunt, what happened to big cousin? What happened to big cousin? Before Chong Huan could speak, Gu Fengzi rushed in like a gust of wind. As soon as she saw Wang She, tears rolled down her cheeks, and she threw herself into Wang She's arms. She hugged her and cried, Eldest cousin, aunt. Wang, who had just calmed down, couldn't help but feel sad again. She hugged Gu Fengzi and cried. Mama Li glared at Gu Fengzi anxiously. She was waiting anxiously for Chong Huan to explain the ins and outs of the matter. But this unruly thing had to rush in and mess things up. Nanny Jiang also frowned slightly. Wang was an old woman. How could she bear the news that her beloved son was in trouble? It wasn't easy to persuade her, but she came and made a mess. If she really cared about her elders, how could she not care about her elders' health? Sang Wan and Mama Li were both angry. She hurriedly pulled Wang to persuade her. Nanny Jiang also comforted her. She gave Xiao Chun, Xiao Li, and the others a look to forcibly pull Gu Fengzi away. Gu Fengzi was crying. She hugged Wang and refused to let go. She kept crying, Big cousin. She was really heartbroken. Sang Wan couldn't bear it anymore. She shouted, Little sister. In a cold voice, she said, Young master just met with a small accident. It won't be a big deal. Why are you crying like this? How is it a small accident? It's all. Gu Fengzi stopped talking halfway. She wiped her tears and said, Aunt, big cousin will be fine. Don't be sad. Miss Biao, please sit to the side. Let Chong Huan quickly explain the situation. Mama Li stared at Gu Fengzi unhappily. She thought to herself, What are you saying now? Young mistress is right. Why are you crying like this? I didn't see you cry like this when your father passed away. Pei, what am I talking about? Xiao Chun and Xiao Li helped Lan Xiang help Gu Fengzi sit to the side. When Sang Wan saw that Wang had calmed down, she ordered Chong Huan, Hurry up and tell me. Chong Huan agreed and told her the whole story. It turned out that Shi Fengju was looking for Shi Fengming in Dazhou. He quickly found out that Shi Fengming and the brothel girl had left Dazhou and went south. As for where they went south, he didn't know. Although he couldn't find Shi Fengming, he knew that Shi Fengming was safe and sound. This could be considered an explanation to second uncle and second aunt. He was worried about his mother and Sang Wan, so he planned to go home first. He only ordered the shopkeepers in the towns along the south to be on the lookout. Once Shi Fengming's whereabouts were discovered, they would secretly send people to follow him and report his whereabouts. Unexpectedly, when the boat arrived at Hondon Pier and docked to resupply, Shi Fengju only wanted to hurry home. That night, he didn't go ashore to stay at an inn. Instead, he stayed in the cabin and waited for the boat to depart at dawn. Who knew that one of the boats would catch fire in the middle of the night? The fire took advantage of the wind and no one noticed it in the dead of night. Soon, a large number of boats docked at the pier caught fire. Shi Fengju's boat wasn't spared either. That night, the raging fire reflected the surface of the water red. The crackling sound of flames could be heard everywhere. Thick smoke rolled in from all directions. Ghosts wailed and wolves howled on and off the boat. It was a mess. In the midst of this chaos, Shi Fengju was accidentally hit by a burning pillar and fell into the water. He didn't fare well in the middle of the night. After he was rescued, he remained unconscious. The doctor said that he was unconscious mainly because of the smoke and heavy objects. He couldn't guarantee that he would wake up, but he could only try his best. Chong Huan and the others were also injured, but none of them were unconscious. When they heard this, they all panicked. They begged the doctor and asked around to see if there were any famous doctors in the nearby towns. They all knew very well that if anything happened to eldest young master, eldest madam would definitely tear them apart. Not to mention eldest madam, they all had feelings for eldest young master after being with him for so many years. Everyone hoped that he would get better soon. 3 days passed, but Shi Fengju still didn't wake up. After some discussion, they didn't dare to be negligent. Everyone stayed behind to watch over him. Chong Huan hired a carriage to return to Qingzhou day and night to report. No one dared to say what would happen next. It was up to the masters to decide. Useless things. How did you all serve him? When Gu Fengzi heard this, she hatefully said to Chong Huan, "All of you were fine, but eldest cousin encountered this kind of thing. At that time, weren't you all busy running for your lives? Slaves who betray their masters. If anything happens to eldest cousin, I'll take your lives. This slave deserves to die." Chong Huan was so scared that she shrank her neck and kowtowed with all her might. "Humph, you also know that you deserve to die. Chong Huan, eldest cousin used to value you so much. Is this how you repay him? Let me ask you, where were you when eldest cousin was in trouble? How could you not be by his side?" Gu Fengzi's eyebrows were furrowed. She was very angry. Wang's eyes were wet. She lifted her handkerchief to wipe them and glared at Chong Huan with hatred. Younger sister. Sang Wan was extremely annoyed. She stopped Gu Fengzi and said to Wang, "Mother, things have already happened. Now is not the time to look into this. Chong Huan, how is eldest young master's situation? What did the doctor say? Did eldest young master get better? Why don't you tell me everything?" "That's right, Chong Huan. Quickly tell us." Mama Li also said anxiously. Jean Huan heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly said, "Replying to young mistress, the doctor we invited is the most famous doctor in Hondon City, Dr. Li. The abrasions and burns on young master's body have been properly treated and bandaged with medicine. There are no injuries to his muscles or bones. Dr. Li said that as long as it is properly taken care of, the wounds will not be inflamed and will not cause a fever. However, eldest young master was hit in the head by a heavy object and choked on the smoke and water. He is still unconscious. But his breathing is even and his complexion is normal. Dr. Li said that there is most likely a blood clot in his brain. He has been administering acupuncture every day. As long as the blood clot in his brain dissipates, eldest young master will be able to wake up." "That means he has not woken up yet?" Wang's heart ached and she was burning with anxiety. "You people, how are you all taking care of him? Fengju too, how can he be so careless? If anything happens to him, who am I supposed to rely on?" Chong Huan's lips moved as if she wanted to say something. But in the end, she closed her mouth and lowered her head even more. "Then did Dr. Li say when he will wake up?" Wang hurriedly asked. Chong Huan said, Dr. Li, he said, it's hard to say. Old mistress, that's why this servant hurried back. Old mistress, please tell me what to do. Chong Huan gritted her teeth and simply said it. If a knife were to stick out, a knife would also stab them. Now that something like this had happened to eldest young master, no matter what the outcome was, they, as servants, could only face it. There was no way they could avoid it. Wang let out a muffled groan and her entire body went limp on the couch. Mother. Sang Wan went forward to support her. Mother, which doctor is willing to say for sure? How could mother not know? Since he diagnosed the cause of the illness and is willing to prescribe medicine and acupuncture for eldest young master, that means he can be saved. Maybe the moment Jean Huan left, first young master has already woken up. Chapter 227. Yes. Missy, young mistress is right. Young master's health has been good since he was young, he will definitely be fine. Mama Li said while holding back her tears. Yes, Aunt Wang, big cousin will definitely wake up. You have to be at ease. Gu Fengzi's tears flowed again. Wang let out a long sigh and nodded at Sang Wan with tears in her eyes. Big sister-in-law. I heard something happened to Fengju, is that true? What exactly happened? As she spoke, Second Lord Shi, Third Old Master Shi, and his wife walked in one after another. When Wang saw them, she could not help but feel sad again. How could she say anything? Sang Wan, Nanny Jiang, and the rest quickly consoled her and explained the situation briefly. When Second Old Mistress Shi heard news of her son and that he was fine, she was elated. Suddenly, she realized what kind of occasion they were in and quickly lowered her eyes to suppress the joy in her heart. At the same time, Third Old Mistress Shi and the others also consoled Wang. Big sister-in-law, don't worry. I think that doctor is a sensible person who knows how to use medicine and acupuncture. Fengju will definitely be fine. Previously, we encountered a similar situation in Shuzhong. That person was in a coma for more than half a month before waking up. After waking up, he was fine as usual. His situation was similar to Fengju's, so he will definitely wake up. Third Old Master Shi quickly consoled. Yes, our old master is right. I remember that incident too, it was indeed similar to Fengju's situation. Third Old Mistress Shi quickly added. Is what you said true? Wang's eyes lit up and she quickly asked. Sang Wan, Mama Li, Gu Fengzi, and the rest could not help but feel refreshed as they looked at Third Old Master Shi and his wife. It was as if as long as they could get confirmation from them, Shi Fengju would definitely wake up. Of course it's true. Third Old Master Shi and his wife quickly nodded. Big sister-in-law, I think we should send someone to take care of Fengju and make the decision if anything happens. How can we only have the servants? Third Old Master Shi said. Wang nodded slowly. This was the reason why Chong Huan came back this time. Moreover, she couldn't be at ease without a close relative by her side. If it weren't for the fact that she couldn't bear the fatigue of the long journey, she would have gone herself. It was naturally inconvenient for the two sisters-in-law to go. Third uncle only knew how to walk birds and fish, so he was not reliable. Second uncle was obviously the most suitable. However, this suggestion was made by him, but he did not take the initiative to say it. If he said it himself, it would naturally be inconvenient for him to refuse. However, when he went there, could he do his best? Wang was still hesitating when Gu Fengzi rushed to kneel in the middle of the room and said, Aunt, let me go. I'm willing to take care of big cousin. Aunt, don't worry, I'll definitely bring my cousin back to you in one piece. Mother. Sang Wan also knelt down and said, Mother, I will go. Young master is my husband. Now that something like this has happened to him, as his wife, I won't feel at ease if I'm not by his side. Mother, please grant my wish. Sang Wan secretly regretted that she was slower than Gu Fengzi by a step. She would have to waste a lot of time and effort to persuade her. Ever since Chong Huan said to invite a master to make the decision, she already had this idea. Who knew that while she was still hesitating on how to bring it up, Gu Fengzi had already said it first. Everyone was stunned. Wang saw that both of them were worried about her son and felt gratified. However, she was also in a difficult position. Elder sister, Gu Fengzi said. Elder sister is now in charge of everything in this household. How can elder sister leave? Let me go. Elder sister, don't worry, I'll definitely take good care of big cousin. Everything in the household will be fine with mother and the other stewards taking care of it. Young master's daily life will be taken care of by me. If I go, it'll naturally be more convenient than you. Mother, this daughter-in-law must go. Otherwise, how can my heart be at ease? Mother, please grant my wish. That's right, young Mississippi. It's rare for young mistress to be so kind. Let young mistress go. The old slave can also help take care of the household's matters. Young mistress is right. Young mistress is taking care of young master's daily needs. Young mistress is very much in line with young master's wishes. There's no one more suitable than her to take care of young master. Mama Li also chimed in. When Chong Huan saw Gu Fengzi kneel down and say that she would go with her, she felt her scalp go numb. She secretly complained in her heart. She had already scolded him to his face just now. If he went with her, who knows how many rows of her head he would have to eat. Thus, he also went forward and kowtowed twice, saying, Old mistress, according to reason, there's no place for this servant to speak. However, this servant has been by young master's side for a long time. I know that young master often misses young mistress. This servant will definitely be willing for young mistress to take care of him. You're just a servant. If you know that there's no place for you to speak, why are you still talking so much? Don't forget that you're a sinner. What right do you have to speak here? Gu Fengzi was very angry. She didn't think that Sang Wan would have the cheek to make the same request when she had the advantage. As for Mama Li, she had always been on the same side as her. It wasn't surprising that she would speak up for her. It wasn't convenient for her to do anything to the two of them. However, if a servant like Chong Huan also blabbered on her face and she didn't say anything, then she wouldn't be able to stay in this household anymore. When Chong Huan heard her words, she lowered her head and lay on the ground, not daring to make a sound. Older sister, Gu Fengzi's tears slowly flowed down her white cheeks. With teary eyes, she looked pitifully at Sang Wan and said, Does older sister have to fight with me? I beg older sister to help me. I beg older sister. Let me go take care of eldest cousin. Gu Fengzi gritted her teeth in anger. She might as well go all the way. She moved her knees and kowtowed to Sang Wan. Everyone in the room was shocked by her actions, and a soft gasp could be heard in the hall. Sang Wan was embarrassed, angry, and hateful. This woman was really shameless. Younger sister, you can't. Sang Wan went forward and helped Mama Li up forcefully. She said, Younger sister, young master is important, but so is mother. You're used to accompanying mother. With you by mother's side, I can rest assured and go. Let's not talk about this any more. Third old Mistress Shi smiled and said, It's rare for both of you to be so worried about Fengju. This is Fengju's fortune. Eldest sister-in-law, I think what Wan Nyang said makes more sense. Fengzi will stay behind to accompany you. Let Wan Nyang go. They're husband and wife after all. It's more convenient for them to take care of each other. Although Fengzi said that, they haven't consummated their marriage, and it's shameful for a lady, how can it be convenient? Wang nodded and said, Third sister-in-law, you're right. Wan Nyang, go back and pack up. You'll be on your way tomorrow morning. It'll be a tough journey. Hurry and send us a letter when you're there. Understand? Yes, mother. Don't worry, your daughter-in-law won't dare to delay on the way. I'll send you a letter when I'm there. Sang Wan promised respectfully. Wang nodded and said to Gu Fengzi, stay behind and accompany aunt. Don't worry, Fengju will be fine. Gu Fengzi was extremely disappointed. When she thought about it carefully, not a single person in the house was willing to speak up for her. Everyone was fawning over Sang Wan. A wave of resentment and unwillingness surged in her heart and she almost vomited blood. But so what if she was unwilling? Even her aunt had spoken up. If she insisted, it would only be a joke. Aunt. I'll accompany Aunt well. May Bodhisattva bless big cousin to be safe and sound. Gu Fengzi nodded obediently. Everyone comforted Wang for a while before they dispersed. Sang Wan was busy going back to Ning Garden to pack up her luggage. On one hand, she ordered for the carriage to be prepared. On the other hand, she had to arrange for the servants to follow her. On the other hand, she had to make arrangements for the household's affairs. Everyone in Ning Garden was so busy that they didn't even have time for dinner. It was only after the lights were switched on that the matters outside were settled. Lu Ye, Xing Ji, and the others were checking their clothes and luggage under the lights. Sang Wan brought along Lu Ye and 2 young and capable daughters-in-law for this trip. Another 4 servants were chosen from the outer courtyard to accompany them. Mama Li and Xing Ji stayed behind to look after the house. Nanny, I'll have to trouble you when I'm not around. Sang Wan sighed softly. Young mistress, don't say that. This is what this old servant is supposed to do. Mama Li also sighed. Her nose turned sour as she held back her sadness. You must bring eldest young master back safely. Nothing can happen to eldest young master. Nanny, don't worry. I will. Sang Wan was also sad. Mama Li knew that she had lost her composure. She blinked her eyes to wipe away the tears in her eyes and forced a smile. Old slave is really short-sighted. Eldest young master is fine to begin with. What nonsense is he thinking? Young mistress, it's getting late. You should rest early. We have to set off early tomorrow. It's going to be a bumpy journey. You have to take care of yourself. Rest assured. At this time, no one will dare to cause trouble. Even if they do, old slave will report it to First Madam to deal with it. Sang Wan nodded. She and Mama Li comforted each other for a while before washing up and returning to their room to rest. However, how could she fall asleep while lying on the bed? It was as if a corner of her heart had been hollowed out. She didn't know when it would be filled. The emptiness made her feel uneasy. For no reason, her heart would beat faster and she would be frightened. Her mind was filled with Shi Fengju. In her previous life and in this life, he had brought her sadness, happiness, despair, and peace. All kinds of memories constantly appeared in her mind. Suddenly, she remembered that his life and death was uncertain. Her heart was in a mess. She had always had him in her life, whether she was willing or not. She had never thought of completely separating herself from him. When she suddenly heard this news, she was undoubtedly shocked and sad. At the same time, she was also flustered and confused. She had lived 2 lives. Could it be that both of them ended in tragedy? It was just that each of them had their own sorrow. Sang Wan tossed and turned the entire night. She could vaguely see things through the bead curtain and got out of bed. Lu Ye, Xing Ji, and Mama Li had also gotten up. The atmosphere was very gloomy. The maidservants silently helped her freshen up. Mama Li also directed the young maidservants to move the luggage out one by one. After she finished freshening up, the kitchen had already served steaming hot porridge and pastries. This is shredded chicken porridge that was cooked early in the morning. There are also fresh shrimp dumplings and milk-steamed buns. Young mistress, quickly eat it while it's hot. The carriage is already waiting outside the second door. We'll be on the road soon. Mama Li urged. How could Sang Wan have the appetite to eat? She shook her head with a bitter smile. In the end, she forced herself to eat a few mouthfuls of porridge before putting it down. She rinsed her mouth and saw that Lu Ye had also finished eating and was waiting for her. She then went out with Mama Li and the others surrounding her. Chapter 228. So it's time. It's time for dinner. I don't know if you usually eat first or change your bandages first. I wonder if the doctor is here yet. Sangwon stood up and tidied her hair. She hurriedly called Luya in. Luya came in and lit the lamp. The room was lit up again. Steward Zhang also came in and said with a smile, "Young master, Dr. Li is here." "Look." Shi Fengju glanced at Sangwon. Sangwon said, "Dr. Li is here. Quickly invite him in. It's more important to diagnose young master." As she said that, she hid behind the partition. "Invite Dr. Li in." Shi Fengju nodded. Steward Zhang hurriedly agreed and went downstairs to bring him in. Dr. Li took his pulse as usual and roughly checked his wound. He gently pressed on the wound and asked how it felt. He then checked the wound on the back of his head. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Congratulations, young Master Shi. Your injury has stabilized. As long as you change your bandages on time, take good care of yourself, and avoid spicy foods, you will be fine after a while. This old man has written a prescription. You just need to ask someone to get the medicine. In the future, this old man will not come here every day. I will come here every 4 days to adjust the prescription according to the situation. If you have any questions, you can send someone to call this old man at any time." Shi Fengju originally thought that he was fine. It was just that Steward Zhang was worried for nothing. He didn't want to reject his kind intentions. But now that Sangwon was here, he didn't want to have to see a doctor twice a day. Hearing this, he happily said, "Thank you for your trouble, Dr. Li. This is great. Steward Zhang, send Dr. Li out." After they left, Sangwon came out from behind the partition and said with a smile, "Since Dr. Li said so, it seems that you are fine. Are you hungry? Why don't you pass me some food? I will help you change your bandages later." Shi Fengju listened to her long-winded words and faint concern for him. He only felt a gentle warmth in his heart. He gazed at her with smiling eyes, almost unable to look away. He only said, "You can make the arrangements as you see fit." Sangwon saw that he was obviously going to throw his hands off and not care about anything else, so she smiled and went to give the order. Steward Zhang and the others were used to serving him and had experience. The food they prepared was light and delicious. Fearing that the wound would become infected, they did not prepare any fish or prawns. They only prepared ordinary chicken and pork. Wintermelon and pork rib soup, minced chicken tender tofu, pork tenderloin stir-fried with fresh bamboo shoots, steamed egg with minced meat, lily and fungus stir-fried seasonal vegetables, chicken rape heart, and so on. It was very light and refreshing. The 2 daughters-in-law each held a box of food in their hands as they went upstairs and set the table in the middle of the hall. Steward Zhang, Chong Huan, and the others helped Shi Fengju get off the bed and walked over to sit on the wide-back rattan chair. Shi Fengju's eyes flashed, but before he could say anything, Steward Zhang had already tactfully led the others out. In a split second, only Shi Fengju and Sangwon were left in the room. Steward Zhang had never served him closely before, but Chong Huan knew him inside out. She had secretly told him that when the young master and the young mistress were together, they did not like to have people around them. Steward Zhang had secretly noted it down. Shi Fengju's eyes flashed. He knew that Chong Huan had not lied to him. Sangwon took a look and realized that everyone had left. She was a patient. If she didn't serve her, who would? She stood up and scooped a small bowl of soup and gently placed it in front of him. She smiled and said, "Drink some soup to warm your stomach. Tell me what you want to eat and I will get it for you." Shi Fengju smiled and said, "I can reach it. You don't have to worry about me. You must be tired from the journey. Hurry and eat." As he spoke, he lifted the bowl of soup and scooped up a spoonful to test the temperature of the soup. Then, he brought it to her mouth. Sangwon was stunned. She stared blankly at him. Shi Fengju laughed and touched her soft lips with the white porcelain spoon. He smiled and said, "Are you stupid? Hurry and open your mouth." Sangwon mechanically opened her mouth and swallowed. She hurriedly said, I can do it myself. You should eat too. Otherwise, the food will get cold." "Okay." Shi Fengju smiled. Then, he lowered his head and slowly ate while chatting with her. After he finished eating, she helped him sit on the couch for a while. Under Steward Zhang's guidance, the two women brought in a wooden basin and a bucket of black medicine. This was to clean Shi Fengju's wounds. After cleaning, they applied ointment and wrapped gauze around his wounds. In the past, this was done by Steward Zhang. Now, it was Sang Wan's responsibility. Carefully removing the gauze, Sang Wan raised her head to look at him from time to time. She smiled and said, "If I hurt you, remember to call me." Shi Fengju saw her squatting in front of the couch and hugging his legs. She lowered her eyes and carefully focused. Looking down from above, he could see her thick and soft eyelashes fluttering gently. Her small and delicate nose was white and cute, and her tender red lips had a faint healthy glow. She was especially attractive. He couldn't help but feel pity and love for her. He reached out to caress her face and neck. He smiled and said, "You've always been careful and gentle. It won't hurt. You're not a rough person like Steward Zhang." Sang Wan laughed at his words. Her hands trembled, trying to avoid his claws. She leaned to the side. "Don't mess around." Before he could finish his sentence, Shi Fengju's wound was pulled and he took a deep breath before furrowing his brows. "Does it hurt?" Sang Wan was both angry and amused. She hurriedly and carefully supported his legs. She smiled at him and said, "Don't move around. Otherwise, if you damage your wounds, who knows when they'll heal." Shi Fengju laughed and withdrew his hands. He begged her again, "Wan Yang, after applying the medicine, can you ask someone to draw water for me to wipe my body? I can't take a bath these few days. It's so uncomfortable." Although the two of them had already had the most intimate contact, and he used to do it so frequently at home, she was no stranger to his body. However, seeing him naked in front of her and wiping his body for her, Sang Wan still found it hard to accept. She said with a slightly embarrassed expression, "It's been so many days. Didn't Steward Zhang and the others help you wipe your body? You love cleanliness so much. How can you stand it?" Shi Fengju's face was filled with disgust. He said, "I'm a man. How can I let a servant do this kind of thing? These few days, I just randomly wiped my hands and feet. When I wipe my body, I still let them wring the towel properly. I do it myself. However, it's still inconvenient, so I'll just put up with it." Sang Wan held back her laughter and didn't say anything. She thought to herself, "You have a lot of problems. However, I'm afraid you're just deceiving yourself. You were pulled out of the water wet, but didn't they still strip you naked and change your clothes? You were unconscious for those few days. How could they not wipe your body? When you woke up, you were so picky. They couldn't say it in front of you. Wan Yang, look at how pitiful a sick person like me is. Can you help me? You're my wife." Shi Fengju saw that she didn't speak, so he smiled and shook her hand. "Let's apply the medicine first. After I help you lie down on the bed, I'll ask someone to bring hot water." Sang Wan accepted her fate. Since he had already spoken, what else could she say? After all, the two of them were husband and wife. They had done everything behind closed doors, so it didn't make a difference. Seeing that she agreed, Shi Fengju smiled happily and said okay. He leaned on the bed and obediently let her do as she pleased. He didn't touch her again. Only when she occasionally looked up at him would he show her a gentle smile. Every time Sang Wan saw it, her heart would immediately skip 2 beats. She hurriedly lowered her head, which made Shi Fengju laugh silently. He looked at her with more interest. The wound on his leg was more than 2 fingers long. The wound was very deep, and she could clearly see that it had healed a lot. Because of the medicine, the originally white calf was dyed with a large brown color and had a faint black color. At that time, it must have been very painful, right? Sang Wan was slightly distressed. She carefully supported his leg. She wet the clean cotton gauze and carefully washed and wiped his leg. "At that time, I was unconscious. How could it be painful? Now that I think about it, I was lucky. Now that you're taking care of me, it's even less painful." Her soft and smooth hand gently stroked the skin on his leg, as if a soft and fluffy brush was brushing across his heart. Wherever it passed, there was a slight itch. Shi Fengjiu liked her considerate actions. Even the process of applying medicine, which he originally hated, suddenly didn't seem so annoying. He even secretly liked it. Sang Wan giggled. "You're only saying that after it's over. If you're not awake when I come, I really don't know. Why are you saying such inauspicious things?" Shi Fengjiu chuckled and didn't take it to heart. Instead, his interest was aroused by her. He smiled and asked, "If I'm not awake when you come, what will you do?" Suddenly, an absurd idea popped up in his mind. He secretly regretted it. If he had known earlier, he would have pretended that he wasn't awake at that time to see her reaction. For a moment, he thought that she would lean on his body and cry her heart out. Wouldn't that make his heart ache? He secretly rejoiced that he didn't do such an absurd thing. "What else can I do?" Sang Wan smiled. "Naturally, I'll stay by your side to take care of you and wait for you to wake up." "What if I don't wake up?" Shi Fengjiu was addicted to asking and didn't want to give up. He smiled and asked again. "Don't talk nonsense." Sang Wan frowned slightly and stared at him. "How can you curse yourself like that? If your mother-in-law hears you, she'll probably scold you." Shi Fengjiu laughed and said, "You know how to use my mother to pressure me. Now that I'm awake, what's the big deal about saying a few words? Wan Yang, you haven't answered me yet." Sang Wan didn't even think about it. She said unhappily, "Then I'll stay by your side to take care of you." Shi Fengjiu was startled. Suddenly, there was an indescribable feeling in his heart. He said, "If I don't wake up, won't you be wasting your time by staying with me?" He paused and laughed. "If I really don't wake up, I don't know what I should ask you to do. Naturally, I want you to stay by my side. But if I want you to stay like this for the rest of your life, I can't bear to see you suffer." Shi Fengjiu seemed to be thinking about something. His voice slowly lowered. Sang Wan was at a loss for a moment. She was his wife. Naturally, she should stay by his side. This was a matter of course and didn't need to think about it. But when she asked herself what her true thoughts were, she was also stunned. Her heart was blank and she didn't have any thoughts. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.